What's up, everybody? So today's episode marks the beginning of our summer season podcast series. And what that's going to comprise of is it will be weekly recaps of The Boys, along with weekly recaps of House of the Dragon, as well as whatever new movie comes out. So this first episode, which officially kicks off the summer session, comprises of a recap of the first 3 episodes of The Boys, which dropped this past Thursday. I hosted that with Eli Holicky. Then my review of Inside Out 2, which I co-hosted with Jeremy Nunez and Paolo Sofia Rivero. And then it ended with my recap of House of the Dragon Season 2, the premiere, which also happened with Eli. All 3 of those episodes are found here. The timestamps will be found in the description. But in the meantime, enjoy.
All right, people. As you can tell, The Boys are back with the premiere of the first 3 episodes of Season 4. That's right. Here we are all these years later, 5 years since this show premiered. And this is the beginning of our little summer project that we're going to be doing here on the Talking TV podcast. Myself and Eli, as you guys can see, we are going to be breaking down every episode of The Boys on Thursday nights after the episode airs. And we're also going to be doing this as well for House of the Dragon on Sundays. We're going to be breaking down every episode of that. But Eli, we got 3 episodes worth of content to get through. We got a lot of stuff to break down. So without further ado, let's get this started, shall we?
Oh, I'm ready, baby.
All right. The boys are back.
You do.
All right, guys. Oh, man, I had so much fun making that intro. All right, so here we are. Season 4. The first 3 episodes were officially dropped today on Amazon. They are such entitled. Episode 1, The Department of Dirty Tricks. Episode 2, Life Among the Septics. And Episode 3, We'll Keep the Red Flag Flying Here. So just to break down a little bit of a recap from what happened last season, where we left off, they unfortunately, Butcher made, as I call it, the very unfortunate decision of turning on Soldier Boy so that he could protect Ryan and teaming up with Homelander. They passed up a golden opportunity to finally kill Homelander, and they missed it. Huey ultimately chose Annie over continuing to use the, what do they call the green compound V last season? I can't remember. The Temp V. That's right. The Temp V, yes. Mother's Milk finally got his revenge on Soldier Boy for the death of his family, even though Soldier Boy even admitted that that was not his making. Queen Maeve is officially powerless and out. She is out of this season officially. And I believe that's pretty much. Oh, and of course, the big thing that kind of leads us directly into this season as well. Butcher now has terminal cancer as a result of his excessive use of the Temp V. And he's got very, very little time to live. So already going into the season, we've already got a ticking clock going on right now, which is always, I think, what's needed when it comes to final seasons of TV shows. There's very, very few seasons of TV shows that can get away without a ticking clock. You know, like you look at the final couple seasons of Breaking Bad, you know, there always felt like there was this ticking clock on them, you know, with Walt constantly trying to avoid the authorities that seem to be constantly closing in on him. And I guess there's a reason why I'm talking about, you know, kind of we're in the end game now, the ticking clock with the final seasons, because just I want to say 2 days ago, Eric Kripke officially announced that next season of The Boys, season 5, would be the final season. They do still plan on making more Gen V, even after the unfortunate passing of Chance Perdomo, and they are going to continue to do more spin-off projects in this universe. But Eli, before we even get into this episode, into these couple episodes, what were your thoughts when you heard that that next season was going to be the last season?
Honestly, I think 5 seasons is a pretty appropriate amount of time for a show like this. I think stretching it out to a 6th season, especially after kind of, Billy's, diagnosis, either because I mean the show's kind of got to end with his big finale with Homelander. I think that kind of stretching it out, unless, they pack a lot into just a few months, I don't realistically see how that would work out. So I think it's for the best. And honestly, it's kind of like Succession, Barry, all these other shows that we've kind of talked about, where honestly, like, if you can end it, and I don't think people are really going to care about the length.
Exactly. Well, not to mention the fact that just based on where this kind of lines up, I mean, The Boys, like many, many other comic book adaptations, has never perfectly adapted the comics like to a T. But I mean, just as far as
sure.
the storyline of the comics, in which where this is matching up, just based off where last season ended, they kind of have to end it because we're getting very close to Homelander in the White House arc, you know? And as we've kind of seen in these first couple of episodes, that's exactly what they're planning to do, you know? Like we see Homelander getting closer to Ryan, starting to train him up. Victoria Newman is running as Robert Singer's VP under the anti-soup agenda, but everybody kind of in power knows that she's a soup and they kind of all know what her plans are, you know? As we've seen, Homelander, despite still being kind of weighed down by his own by his own insecurities, is still very much set on maintaining power over the humans. And really, I think these couple episodes really showed that, you know, much more so than the boys, it's Homelander himself that has consistently stopped himself from finally achieving the power that he wants, because at the end of the day, he's human. He doesn't know what the fuck he wants, you know? Does he just want to be coddled and have the mommy that he never did? You know, does he actually want to kill all humans? You know, does he like we don't know what he wants, because he doesn't even know what he wants. And that's what continues to make him such a fascinating character. Anthony Starr has not missed a beat since he first broke out on the scene 5 years ago on the show. He's easily, I mean, Carl Urban and Jack Quaid are the stars of the show, but he is the breakout talent from this, to say the least. As far as, you know, the rest of the cast, not too much has changed. Like I said, all of these actors have been playing these characters for quite a long time now, so they're all pretty comfortable. That, you know, they all know their characters very well, and it also makes it pretty seamless for them to incorporate new characters as well. You know, with Stormfront in season 2, Soldier Boy last season. This season we've got a couple of new additions as well. We've got 2 new soup additions to the 7, which we will break down once we get further into the episodes. We have Firecracker, portrayed by Valerie Curry, and Sister Sage, portrayed by Susan Hayward. Both of them kind of provide like very unique and different perspectives, and the boys' never-ending attempt to commentate both on society as well, in addition to real life. And we also have another Supernatural alumni popping up in here after Jensen Ackles and the dude who plays Singer, Jim Beaver, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, aka the Winchester twins' father. I don't remember his name from Supernatural, aka Negan on The Walking Dead, the comedian on Watchmen, so many other different iconic performances as a former friend / agent of Butcher's, who is here to help, or maybe we'll break that down more. So Eli, before we get into our specifics as far as what happened in each episode, what did you think overall of these first 3?
I was pretty pleased overall with the quality of the episodes. I really like how they're just moving the plot along, one thing after another. Seems like they're taking the show in a really interesting direction. I did have a few kind of problems with some of the side plots and how they kind of used up the screen time for a few characters, but I'm sure we'll get more into that as we kind of get more into the deep dive here.
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to agree as well. Like these episodes are long. They're not like they move at a very brisk pace, but they usually average between 55 minutes to an hour long. So like, you know, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of storylines that you usually have to go through. But, and I have had this criticism of the show in the past, some of the side plots you definitely don't need as much. You definitely like oftentimes not. I find that the Frenchie and Kimiko stuff I really don't need. Mother's Milk is usually pretty compelling of a character, but that's mostly just because of how awesome of an actor Laz Alonso is. The Huey and Annie. Huey as a character I love. And I think Jack Quaid's performance on the show is phenomenal. The Huey and Annie stuff has always kind of gotten a little tiresome for me. But Huey might go in a different direction this season after we bring in a character that they did announce that this character was going to come in, but I completely forgot that they were going to. But once again, like I said, the intrigue is always with Butcher and Homelander. Like the show started with those two. It is, you know, those two shows. You know, I know Huey's technically the main character that we were introduced to, but no, it's always been about Butcher and Homelander. So without further ado, let's get into these episodes. We got a lot of stuff to cover. So episode 1, the Department of Dirty Tricks. Opening scene, the boys are trying to perform a recon mission. They're trying to infiltrate Victoria Newman's party that they're trying to in order to try and, you know, potentially kill her, and of course that doesn't work. Butcher also has found himself relegated down in the team. You know, the team that he's not the leader anymore. They are not willing to put up with any of his crap really anymore. So, of course, you know, it's a standard boys opening scene in the sense of where they have a plan, they're trying to stick to it as best they can, and then some soup nonsense comes out of nowhere and fucks it up immediately. And in this case, you have, well, it's 2 things. One was a clip that they dropped online, which was Butcher discovering that Ryan and Homelander were at the event and attempting to talk to Ryan and attempting to get him to come with him. But also, the unfortunate realization and kind of an unfortunate payoff to last season where we saw Newman injecting her daughter with Compound V in order to protect her, and now we see what the effects of that are. I mean, Eli, did you know what, like, because that's the thing with, like, whenever you administer Compound V to someone, you never know how it's going to manifest. You like the powers, it's like pick a power out of a hat, really. And I mean, definitely I can say off the bat, like, this show is definitely going for more of a body horror thing. I mean, there's always been elements of body horror in the show, but it's always been used to comedic effect. But I think in this season in particular, they're really going for more of a body horror, because a lot of the kills that happen in this season, they're much more jump scary, they're much more shocking, and they're a lot more just brutal and violent for the sake of being brutal and violent, rather than kind of having like the comedic twist. Like, there's no love sausages this time around. There's no like ant dudes jumping into dudes' dicks and blowing them up from the inside. They don't have any of that stuff now. Like, the violence here definitely feels a lot more, not focused, but a lot more intentional, you know, like intentionally shocking.
Yeah, we got some messy scenes in just about every episode so far, and I'm all for it, man.
Yeah, we got So Newman's daughter has got little face suckers coming out of her that protrudes from her mouth now. And they paid off some Secret Service guys. Oh man, it really sucks to be an extra. This show, I think, should really take Star Trek's place as far as being the whole. If you're not a named character on this show, you are not lasting long. You are not lasting long at all, because oh my god, those Secret Service agents that they paid off. Oh man, it doesn't work. Of course, their plan blows up in their face. Newman immediately figures it out. Corners Huey, tries to perform a truce. Huey literally throws acid in her face, and then Butcher shoots her in the head. Doesn't work at all. Yeah, like, of course, it's like every single other one of the boys' plans. Every time they have a plan, it just goes to hell, because the Supes, they're just unpredictable. You just ultimately cannot predict what you're going to do. And the worst part is that Homelander, who again sees Butcher in this episode, doesn't even view him as a threat anymore, because he sees, the cancer that's growing on his brain. So he's like, oh shit, you're not even a threat to me anymore, like you're gonna be dead in 6 months. Like, so much for that fight to the death that we were gonna have, which, I mean, obviously hold on to your butts, because Butcher, if there's one human that is just as unpredictable as the Supes are, it's Butcher.
Oh yeah.
What's it called? So next scene, you have Mother's Milk, who is the new leader of the boys, having to sit down with Grace Mallory and Robert Singer, trying to plan out the next move once they realize that their plans to take down Newman completely fail. And they're like, oh, okay, so you remember taking down Supes is the number one priority, And so next you have the introduction of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character, Joe Kessler, who's an old friend of Butcher's, who tells him that Butcher's got to do what he has to do best, which is always playing outside the lines and playing dirty before the Supes start rounding them up and putting them into camps. And he also, again, I like this dynamic. I like this dynamic because even though Jeffrey Dean Morgan is awesome, it kind of shows that, like, yeah, there's Billy Butcher is not the only Butcher out there, as I say, because, again, Butcher is not somebody who usually has a lot of soft spots. But when it comes to Ryan, that's kind of a glaring weakness, because as we know, he's the only reminder that he has of his deceased wife, Becca. And unfortunately, as Jeffrey Dean Morgan points out, he's like, yeah, you're not someone that has a soft spot. You had a shot at actually taking out Homelander. What happened? And, well, I mean, the results kind of speak for themselves. We also see with Homelander as well. Homelander not doing too well. He's going through, his hairs are starting to gray. He's having more dye put on his face than usual. He's as if we didn't have enough reasons to be terrified of Homelander. Now he's going through a fucking midlife crisis. Like, I mean, is there ever going to be something with this guy that's not like going to blow shit up,
No, I just think he's just going to be creeping towards that point of fully snapping and just trying to just take over the world. And each season we're getting a little bit closer and closer. And because I think that's one of the biggest intrigues with his character is, like, when's he finally going to lose it or do something crazy, like how he did in the season 3 finale and killed that guy, or and now that he's kind of almost being rewarded for it, is like, how far is he going to keep pushing that line until it's which is why I think they're probably going to save it until the very end of the show for when he does fully snap and kind of go like Omni-Man mode and just try and take over the planet. And,
well, I mean, if this season goes the way that I'm thinking it's going, we could have him in the White House by the end of this season. We don't even we might not even necessarily have to wait until next season.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Couple bullet points for the middle of this episode that I did want to run through before we get to Sister Sage, because she is, as you can tell with her introduction across these 3 episodes, she's going to be a pretty she's going to be a pretty important and impactful character going forward. So the biggest things, we have a new Black Noir after the original Black Noir's unfortunately very tragic passing last season when Homelander literally ripped his guts out. We have a new Black Noir, same costume, same actor, which I think is hilarious, but because it's clearly like an actor who just they gave some compound V and was told to like pose as him, he's constantly talking way more than Black Noir ever has in the entire history of this show. He's constantly asking the other guys like, yeah, I need some direction here. What's going on? Are we just randomly killing people? Like, what's happening here? You know, like he's so confused and lost. That bit I thought was phenomenal. Black Noir has consistently been one of my favorite characters on this show.
Oh, yeah.
Starlight's Foundation not doing well because, I mean, well, Starlight doesn't want to be Starlight. She wants to be Annie January. It's like, yeah, the whole reason why people want to sign up for this foundation is because you encourage them as Starlight, and now you're not going to, and then you wonder why your foundation is tanking. So once again, just another excuse of Annie's idealism, once again getting in the way of common sense. No surprise there. Frenchie, once again, a character that I am unfortunate that I love upon his introduction, and unfortunately am continuing to struggle as far as figuring out his relevance going forward, which is that, yeah, we never pretended that Frenchie exactly went on one side of the aisle as far as sexuality goes, but once again, we have another instance of, say it with me, Eli, put a chick in it and make her gay. Only in this case, it's Frenchie. And I mean, like, I get it. It's constantly trying to mirror today's world, but like, there doesn't seem to be any commentary going on. And as far as that plot line, basically in order to elaborate, Frenchie is basically revealed to like be in love with one of the workers for Annie's foundation, this guy Colin, and I'm assuming that this guy's not long for this world either, because we also what happened, you know, with what's her name, with Annie's former boyfriend who joined the Seven for all of 5 seconds last season before he got his face smashed in by Homelander. Yeah, that didn't go so well. So I'm expecting that this Colin dude, it's not going to end well for him either once the Supes eventually figure out about him. And then there's, once again, as if we already didn't know that Frenchie had a tragic, violent past. It's like, oh, Frenchie just killed this random dude's family. And I'm like, I'm assuming this is going to tie into something important, but... And we also, as far as Kimiko, we're diving a little bit more into her past as well. You know, she's kind of like just telling Frenchie, you know, yeah, just go for it. You know, just go for it. Fuck it. Also, the other big thing as well, and we're going to get to this now before we get to the final act as well. Huey's dad, portrayed by Simon Pegg, who, as we know, is kind of, that was kind of a neat little Easter egg from the comics, because as we know, the character of Hugh Campbell in the comics was modeled after Simon Pegg. Unfortunately has a stroke. They say, I think it's because of like some experimental drug that he's been taking and is kind of ridden comatose. And a result out of the blue comes in Huey's mom, who has not been seen or mentioned at all up until this point, portrayed by Rosemary DeWitt, who was in a very memorable episode of Black Mirror, the Archangel episode, for everybody who doesn't remember, as well as being Anne Hathaway's co-star in Rachel Getting Married, which is still to this day the best movie that Anne Hathaway's ever been in. And she kind of just comes in out of nowhere, and naturally Huey's pissed. He's like, what the fuck? Where have you been? Like the last, 20 years of my life, you know? So there's that. Okay, now let's get to the big ones right now, because I feel like that's, and how could I forget? How could I forget? As if they haven't taken enough shots at the deep. As if they haven't taken enough, every fucking chance they get to just punch this guy in the nuts as hard as they can. And it's been a long way since this was the dude that kind of like exposed Annie in more ways than not to, you know, some of what really goes on behind the scenes when she first joined the Seven. I mean, it's as if the octopus sucking him off last season wasn't bad enough. Now he's in a full-blown secret relationship with the octopus after his wife divorced him, who he keeps in a cage in his room. It has a name. I can't remember what the name is. It's like Ambrosius or something like that. Yeah. And it's voiced by Tilda Swinton, because why not? Like, why not? Like, this character is already like a joke to begin with, you know, like I accidentally killing the dolphin, the whale getting impaled, the freaking yelling at people on the playground in Cleveland, shaving his head, his gills talking to him, joining the freaking church in season 2, and still not getting accepted back into the Seven. I mean,
yeah, he's been beat down quite a bit.
Yeah, the Deep is the punching bag of the show. It's safe to say, you know, it's pretty safe to say. What's it called? Now, so some of the other big big plot lines that happen in this episode before we get into it. Because like I said, usually the way that they structure these episodes is the first episode is still primarily set up and recap from the last season, and then episodes 2 and 3 are the ones that really kind of set up the plot and the story for the season. Butcher meets with Victoria Newman, and this is the only mention that we get of the Godolphin virus from Gen V, which, as we know, is going to play a direct part into this season. It's not mentioned or brought up at all in any of these first 3 episodes outside of this scene, but it's going to be pretty important going in, as far as because as we know, the Godolphin virus is the first major actual weapon that humans have against superheroes, and it could be a major turning point. And considering the fact that Butcher, as of right now, is the only one that knows about this virus outside of, because again, the 14 Supes were in prison at the end of Gen V, and everybody and all the adults that knew about it are dead. So, what's it called? So that's that. So Butcher proposes a truce, and Newman says that in exchange for that, he has to go and get the Red River files that Huey has on her. So he's about to do that. Next, okay, let's talk about her. One of the new additions that we get in this episode and for this season, and one of the newest members of the Seven, Sister Sage, portrayed by Susan Hayward, self-proclaimed smartest person on the planet. She doesn't have any superpowers, visible superpowers, but her super intellect is definitely enough to make her more than a threat. You've got she was also on the teen superhero squad that A-Train was on as well. A-Train knows her as well, and she's kind of becoming the new Homelander's new strategist. Kind of the decision to bring her in comes from Homelander being tired of everybody just sucking up to him constantly and telling him what they think he wants to hear and disagreeing with him on everything. He's like, yeah, if I'm going to run this thing, I need somebody who actually knows what they're doing and is also going to tell it to me how it is, And of course it's going to be ripe for conflict, because even though Homelander thinks it's what he wants, he doesn't actually, Yep. So now in comes his character, and it's a very interesting take in the sense of where she's a black female superhero who still kind of has the views of a lot of the other Supes, but comes at it from a strictly like evolutionary standpoint. Like she's not coming at it from a white saviorist standpoint like Stormfront, or from like kind of a more sympathetic front like Soldier Boy. She is straight up hardcore like evolutionary, like we are the dominant species, so therefore we are more than humans. And so that the take on that character is very interesting. What did you think of that character? And kind of what her role is going to be this season, do you think?
I personally, I like her. I think she's kind of a fresh, I don't know what to say, like a fresh coat of paint, if you will, to the kind of the already diverse cast of characters that we have. And I kind of like the social commentary that kind of comes with her character, where the real smartest people, behind everything are kind of just sitting in the background pulling the strings, while the politicians and everyone else is kind of fighting amongst themselves in the public eye, and just so they can all get more power and advance their own goals and everything. So I thought that was pretty well done and everything, and I guess it makes sense. She doesn't really want to be at the forefront of things,
right.
And it's pretty interesting to see a character that's like that, because every other character is like always trying to they're obviously they make it such a big deal in the show, where there's always the attraction of fame and that pull of status and everything with being in the Seven. Like Firecracker's a perfect example. Like the other new character we'll probably get to in just a second, but like polar opposite in terms of their motivations, and yet they still almost kind of want the same thing. So
exactly. And we're gonna talk about that when we get to episode 2 as well, especially since that's kind of where Firecracker makes kind of her big entrance there. Although I'm still not necessarily a fan of like the twist as far as how she's connected to Annie, but we'll get there when we get there. And then we have the big finale, which is where kind of the first part of Sister Sage's plan in order to kind of make sure that the Supes remain dominant over the masses. Because as we know, like I said, the humans have kind of split into their multiple factions. The Starlighters versus the what's it called? Versus what are they called? The Home Teamers, I think, are what they call something like that. And so you have it where they bring Mother's Milk's ex-wife's ex-boyfriend, Todd, I think his name was.
Todd.
Todd. They set him up as far as having a pretty important part. He's got he's the one cheering on Homelander when he lasers the dude's head off.
Yep.
And this poor sap. Again, if there's one thing that this show is constantly trying to emphasize, it is that as long as these Supes are in charge, nobody is safe. Absolutely nobody is safe. And the biggest thing that we have is Todd and a couple of other Home Teamers are brought to this one location by Homelander and Sage, and he instructs A-Train, the Deep, and Black Noir 2 to beat these dudes to death so that they can lay their bodies at the Foundation and frame them and then frame the Starlighters as being responsible for the deaths, you know? So that's
wild.
And that's just the end of episode 1. And you're just like, oh man, you know?
Yeah, they're pulling out all the punches.
They really are. Yeah. So we got a couple of comments in the chat as well. Words 789. I don't like Sister Sage. She calls everyone and everything racist while at the same time is plotting soup superiority. I'm gonna disagree. I didn't see her like calling everybody and everything racist. I didn't hear that. I gotta say. Also,
yeah,
Dustin
it felt like there were a couple comments here.
There are a couple, but it wasn't like everything. She was very kind of aware of her stance and kind of everybody else's stance.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the forefront of her character.
Yeah. Dustin, what a waste bad payoff involving Todd. I wouldn't say it's a bad payoff. I would say, if anything, it's kind of what The Boys does, which is in the sense of where, like, what were they really going to do with a character like Todd? Like, in all honesty, what was the longevity of that character really like, you know? And
personally, I welcomed his death. I think he kind of served his purpose just in season 3, kind of seeing how the kind of divide and how he was one of those many people falling into the Homelander rabbit hole.
I'm just surprised that they brought him back. And also, I'm not going to lie, like, the way that they kind of set him off was kind of perfect if you think about it. You know?
I agree.
It's like, this is what happens when you think that, like, you know, the higher-ups are going to look out for you. They're not, you know?
Yeah,
what's it called? How did Homelander and his son watch Smash Mouth? Didn't Smash Mouth die? The lead singer of Smash Mouth died. The band, all of them did not. You know, this is like a Leonard Skinner situation where they all died in a plane crash, you know? So that's pretty much everything that happens with episode 1. So now we're gonna dive into episode 2, Life Among the Septic. So kind of opens with a pretty big important scene, which is that Butcher, unfortunately, in a way, kind of has his own point proven to him, which is where Butcher's whole thing is the minute that you show vulnerability, you kind of get screwed over. And that's kind of exactly what happens to him in the opening scene, but that also has to do with the fact that, you know, how many people he screwed over in his life, which is where he's like, yeah, you know, he tells Mother's Milk about the illness, about the cancer, and Mother's Milk is like, yeah, you're a liability. Get the fuck out, you know? And he was kind of like, wait, what? And it's just like, immediately. It's just like, oh, yeah, you know, you're done. This is it, you know? So he kind of walks out, Butcher's out of the boys. They're like, well, that happened. So the bulk of this episode, you have 3 main plot lines going on. You have the events that happened at TruthCon, which we're going to get into. Definitely not at all subtle about its commentary on conspiracy theorists. Huey and Annie staying behind to track down A-Train after they are pretty easily able to figure out that he was the one that moved the bodies to outside the trial. And also Homelander beginning to coach Ryan on his own save. Also the fact that it's like, are we at all surprised that Homelander was found innocent? Like, we kind of all knew that was going to happen. I'm sorry. What jury in their right mind of all humans, I don't care how damning the evidence is, what jury in their right mind is going to convince a dude that can laser all their heads off, you know? Again, it's kind of the never-ending kind of conflict with Homelander in the situation of where it's like, how can you keep this dude down at the end of the day? Because he still has the ability to freaking laser everybody's heads off without, you know, without even a second's hesitation. So we have TruthCon in this episode, which is a not at all subtle commentary on the likes of people like Alex Jones, you know, the people who love to tout and peddle conspiracy theories. And more recently, you know, they're definitely also kind of poking fun at alt-right sites like the Daily Wire as well. That, again, not at all subtle as far as the commentary. I mean, The Boys, I wouldn't exactly say The Boys has ever been subtle with its commentary. I mean, Vought literally kind of looks like and is modeled after Amazon. Well, the reason for that, Dustin, as far as there being no kryptonite, is because Homelander's not an alien. He was made in the lab. But you are kind of right. It is kind of weird that they don't have any kryptonite. But hey, I guess that's kind of the purpose that the virus serves as well.
Yeah, but he can't see through zinc. So.
That's true. He can't see through zinc. You know, modeled after Superman in almost every way. You know, just you know, some minor modifications there. So the TruthCon, that's kind of where we get our big introduction to Firecracker, who is kind of this alt-right touting, all American. You know, got the Southern accent, you know, touting the whole, transgenders, gender affirming theory, get that out, keep that away from our kids, bring strike back to men and women, all the far right talking points, all talking points. What's it called? So kind of the whole point that they're doing there is they are going to kind of, basically track down Sister Sage and see if they can, find some more evidence on, what is it? Oh my God, I'm already losing my points here. because I'm just still thinking about the Splinter scene, which we're gonna get to,
dude.
which is what's they're basically trying to figure out what they're up to there. So that they're there and they're going around, they're investigating. Frenchie and Kimiko, of course, having more conflict. Kimiko sees posters for what's it called for the group that kidnapped her and starts just chugging beers. So her and Frenchie are both just not doing well. Frenchie is still, of course, having PTSD. Butcher shows up at the convention, of course. This is like, listen, I'm like naturally. He's like, you guys don't tell me what to do anymore, so I'm gonna do what I do. Mother's Milk tries to get him to leave. He, of course, is like, yeah, you try to be a good dude, and look how that happened as far as her getting with Todd. He basically insults Mother's Milk's wife, and of course that gets him the shit beat out of him.
Oh yeah.
And then of course you have they have to do this. They have to do one of these in every episode where they just have some soup doing something absolutely ridiculous and audacious. And I mean
they don't, but they still do it anyway.
They do. They don't have to, but they just do it because they clearly want to. And I mean, as if Herogasm, you literally had freaking extras behind the scenes telling Carl Urban and Jensen Ackles last season when they were doing Herogasm to like, man, I seen some shit in my time. And honestly, I think this topped it because after Love Sausage, after the dude blowing up, after the reverse Ant-Man inflation, after Herogasm, which honestly was kind of tame in comparison to the opening of the season, Human Centipede. Like,
well, not only did someone have to like think of this, they had to get a guy, like tell him his role, like, yeah, you're gonna eat your own ass multiple times. We're gonna like edit you doing it over and over again. And it's just like, holy cow, how do you it's so absurd. I love it. Like it's just like that like it doesn't surprise me looking back on it, but just
not
like
at all.
When I first saw it, my jaw was just like hung open. I had to pause the episode and just like just stop and just process what I had just seen. I was like, okay, that's and the just the fact his mouth was wet and everything. Like, oh my god,
classic.
The detail just oh man.
Yep, just classic the boys antics. Every time you think, oh, what could possibly go wrong here? You get fucking a love sausage, or you get an exploding dick, or you get you never know what you're gonna get in the show. It's part of the charm of it, it's part of it. I'm not exactly gonna say that the humor, it's so, the body horror is so gross and outlandish and ridiculous and over the top. But they always somehow nail it. Every time they always somehow nail it. And then of course,
it's too good.
Sometimes
too good.
And then of course, surprise, they get tracked down. Sister Sage was easily able to figure out that that they were there to try and find them out, and then they get attacked by him. And then they actually do a really, really funny bit where after Butcher comes in and saves them from Splinter trying to pile on top of them. They finally do the thing, which is where they're never really clear about this, which is where they're like, yeah, okay, so in this version, if you kill the original, then all the clones will die. And I thought that was really funny how when they finally did kill the original, and all the clones are like, oh no, you killed the pride, and then he like tries to confess the firecracker. It's like, we've won you, and then they die. I thought that was great. I'm like, yes, okay, that's the type of cloning that I want to see ultimately,
Yeah, because whenever they're parodying these superpowers, they always gotta put some funny twists on them to either as like a weakness, like even with just like Huey teleporting, like how
I'm so glad you brought that up. That is still to this day my favorite bit, my favorite twist on The Boys in terms of portraying superpowers realistically, in the sense that every time Huey teleports, because this was always a problem that I had, I'm like, does teleportation, does that only affect like biomaterial, or does that affect act like clothing too? Because you always see people teleporting and everything with clothing, and it never disappears. But I love how every time Huey teleports, and with someone too, the clothes don't go with him. And I thought that was fucking great. That was probably my favorite part of last season. Let's get to the other storylines real quick before we wrap up this episode. So you have Huey and Annie tracking down A-Train. You have some really, honestly, A-Train has low-key been like the highlight of this season so far. I know it's only been 3 episodes, but he's low-key been like the highlight as far as just like kind of his arc, where he's like really starting to like see the repercussions of his actions and all the horrible things that he's done, and he's starting to get to the point now that it's affecting him and his family, because A-Train's always been such an interesting character in the sense of where he despite his many flaws, his horrible motivations, and his absolutely abominable acts that he's committed. Again, he's the guy that unfortunately kind of kicked off the events of the show when he ran through Robin, Huey's girlfriend, and, fucking dematerialized her, or vaporized her, rather. He's always been an incredibly empathetic character in the sense of where, again, his relationship with his brother and his family, and the fact that he's always been wanting to overcome his where he came from has always been a very strong motivator. It's a very empathetic part of his character. And when you see him like trying to impress his nephews, and then his brother pulls up on the wheelchair after his brother was unfortunately, attacked and almost put into a coma the last season, and his brother kind of outs him and is like, yeah, this dude's no hero. Everything, all those people that he saved, those were all extras. All the bad guys that he defeated were all stunt men. Everything was staged and coordinated. He's like, you're not a hero. And and unfortunately he outs himself to his nephews. And so Huey and Annie unfortunately realize this. And of course, A-Train sees them, and of course, he figures out that they were following him. But he does something rather unexpected and noble, in the sense of where he gives them the footage that proves that, that he placed the bodies there. Of course, it doesn't implicate himself, but he does something noble and nice, and it kind of gives an indicator as far as like, okay, there might be some redemption to be had here. And then, of course, back to Homelander and Ryan, where Homelander, but also, again, showing that there might be hope for Ryan as well, who we were kind of worried about when he ultimately chose Homelander over Butcher at the end of last season. But now we're seeing the needle starting to turn the other way, and he's starting to see what a psychopath Homelander is when he's like, training to become a hero, when he's trying to train him, with all the behind the scenes. And Ryan's still kind of young, but he's immediately starting to figure out, he's like, oh, all this superhero stuff and like looking up to and idolizing superheroes, that's all bullshit. That is all bullshit. It is all for show. All the bad guys are all stuntmen. Like none of this is real. I'm not really saving anybody. But then, of course, it all gets flipped on its head when, when during the scene, when it's supposed to happen, during broad daylight, unfortunately, Homelander shows up and it's like, do it. He's like the Emperor Palpatine whispering in his ear. He's like, do it. And then Ryan shoves the stuntman and he goes splat against the wall. Again, an effect that we've seen so many times done so well. Man, this show never shies away from its core and its bloodshed. Ever. If it gets half the chance. But then, of course, you have the ending scene of this episode, which is where, again, Butcher comes to Mother's Milk. One last chance. He's like, look. He's like, I don't have that much time left, He's like, I fucked up a lot. He's like, I'm only doing this in order to try and save Ryan. Please give me a chance. And Mother's Milk is like, nope. Fool me once, that's on you. Fool me twice, that's on me. And he shuts the door on him. You also have Frenchie contacting what's it called? You also have the reveal here that that Frenchie contacting one of his old flames, who kind of is the exposition device that tells him that he murdered Colin's entire family. And you also have another great bit, which is the Deep finally standing up for himself to Ashley after Ashley's been insulting the ever-loving shit out of him, and that has as encouraged by Sister Sage, and that has an incredible payoff at the end of episode 3, which we will get to right now. So episode 3 will keep the red flag flying here. So opening scene, you have another one of the boys' very famous conventions that Homelander is making another grand, glorious speech for, where he officially introduces Sage and Firecracker as the two newest members of the Seven. We didn't get a chance to talk about Firecracker a lot because, like I said, the previous episode is kind of a lot of her introduction, and we kind of find out her connection to Annie in this episode. But what did you think of Firecracker as far as once she, actually, once Sister Sage got past the bullshit as far as, yeah, I know, the whole dog and pony show as far as, getting it for eyeballs, but why are you really doing this? And she's like, yeah, I'm kind of providing a voice for the disenfranchised. How would you feel? Would you rather feel like a badass, warrior fighting for a just cause against an evil cabal? Or would you rather feel like just like a broke, lonely, hopeless, nobody, And I'm like, yeah, again, it's a part of the reason why the incel movement and why people like Andrew Tate have been so influential recently, specifically amongst our generation, because we've got an entire generation of guys that truly do feel aimless and hopeless. It's why conspiracy theories have been so adamant, Yeah,
and kind of obviously bouncing off last episode, I think they handle the themes in a very mature way when they were kind of going over that. It's like a lot of these people, they're either really mentally unwell. Maybe they had they could have lost their house, or there's a whole multitude of reasons why someone could kind of go down that path. And these people, these voices prop up as they're giving them something to blame and something to be angry at and channel that hatred towards that they maybe feel for themselves or whatever. And it's I don't know if I ever told you, and people in the comments, this is a true story, but I went to high school with the Buffalo shooter that killed all those people in that supermarket. And it's my hometown is kind of like, we've seen the effects that can have on people, and I thought they handled that in a really, really good way, especially kind of seeing someone that was 2 or so years younger than me kind of go down that path and end up like, you know, it led to some of the worst possible things imaginable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was pretty nuts. And in terms of how they kind of handled Firecracker's character with that, like, I think her directing all her rage towards Starlight, you know, in the way that she did, like, it makes
Right.
sense. Like, it's obviously happening in the real world where all these voices are propping up, whether they're racist or they're, you know, what, I mean, there's a million different reasons, but you
Right.
know, but you kind of see the long lasting damage that it can have, and how it just doesn't, even if they don't necessarily like believe what they're saying, right? Like, it's just,
Right.
it's, you know, they're
Yeah.
getting the status, they're getting the money, like, it's like, you know, just
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Right. It's always tricky once money comes in, but it is, again, it's troublesome because, again, it's not, they are giving a message that gives hope and allows a group of people who, for the most part, usually feel like nobody notices them, and they finally feel like, oh, somebody is finally listening to us. It's part of it's the entire reason why Trump got elected president. It's the entire reason why why the MAGA movement is still so big, because you have an entire section of the country that feels like they have been beholden to a coastal elite that could give less of a shit about them and have not had their voices heard. And finally, for the first time, they had somebody standing up for them, you know, regardless of the fact of whether Trump actually cares about them or not, which I don't actually know. I don't know the guy, but at the very least, you understand why he has such a groundswell underneath him. And that's kind of why it always makes me laugh when people are like, oh, like, you know, we don't understand why so many people follow Trump. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I'm like, really? I'm like, have you looked at the state of the country right now? Like, it's not that hard to figure out. But yeah, so the major plot lines that happened in this episode after Sage and Firecracker are officially welcomed in. Butcher and Kessler are planning to kidnap Ryan so that they can prevent him from turning out like his dad. Mother's Milk tells Huey and Annie his plan to potentially turn A-Train into a solid ally. You also, like I said, get the reveal of the Firecracker Annie connection, and you also have the big thing where Sage and Homelander are officially fire Ashley, but they keep her around as a figurehead. And Ashley has this whole big thing where she's like, yeah, I'm gonna quit Vought. I'm gonna go be a girl boss at Disney. And well, we all see how that turns out, as we'll get to it a little bit. Yeah, so you know, as we see, unfortunately, you know, when Homelander, you know, lasers off the one employee who they thought was the spy, Annika. Yeah, and that was, I'm like,
yeah, she didn't deserve that.
Oh, she didn't deserve that, but it's like, poor Annika. It's like, but you knew it was gonna happen. Like, come on, you seriously think that Homelander, the most impulsive idiot of this entire batch of impulsive idiots, was not gonna kill someone who doesn't even really confess? She's like, yeah, I donated some money and bought some T-shirts, I guess.
Not even. She just said she spoke to Starlight on the phone. She didn't even get into it.
That's it. She didn't even get a chance to confess. The whole dude is like, zap, dead. It's like, wow, okay. You know, really doing a good job of encouraging morale there, you know, and Vought.
As if his fuse couldn't really get any shorter. It's
Yeah,
you kind of see as just zero tolerance for even the slightest bit of insubordination. Like, so you kind of, and that's why you kind of see that struggle with A-Train, how he's just like, he hates being with him, but at the same time, like, he's terrified to, you know, go against him, right?
Exactly,
like
exactly. Yep. So
buckling their knees to him.
Yep, exactly. So now my big question is so real quick. So like you were talking about with A-Train, right? So Mother's Milk manages to contact A-Train and manages to successfully convince him to become a rat for them. An idea that Huey and Annie are not in favor of at all, understandably so, because A-Train has been very much, you know, flip-flopping back and forth, and they know that he kind of only does what really benefits him. You know, he gave them the info on Stormlight on Stormfront at the end of season 2, but then season 3, unfortunately, you know, when they were trying to recruit him in order to go against Homelander, he unfortunately sold them out to Homelander, which is what got what's her name? I can't even remember the dude's name. Annie's ex-boyfriend from last season killed. So, like I said, A-Train is always kind of flip-flop back and forth as far as his loyalties go. But like I said, if they are doing a redemption arc for him, it does make sense as far as him helping them out, you know? You know, and Mother's Milk does play the black card, but it seems to work, you know, as he gives them the site of Newman's next meeting, which is for Vought on Ice. Very
Oh.
clearly a parody of Disney on Ice, where you have different musical actors singing and twirling around on ice. They're already adapting clearly a Firecracker inspired sketch, which is where, why do we have to say happy holidays? Christmas is supposed to be for everybody. And then of course Homelander shows up, which they were not expecting. They're trying to listen in, trying to hear more advice. Homelander is talking to Newman and Sister Sage, basically saying like, okay, here's what's going to happen. Singer's going to get into office. We're going to kill Singer. You're going to take over office. You're going to out yourself as a soup, and you're going to enact all of these pro-soup policies, which also goes in direct opposition to what Singer was telling her at the beginning of the episode, which is where he's basically trying to force her hand, because again, they all know that she's a soup, but she has to play face where they're trying to force her hand by having her enact a bunch of more anti-soup rhetoric, which, as
Right.
Was at the time, was supposedly her platform that she was running on before, it was revealed that she is a soup. What's it called? So unfortunately, Huey sweats and gives himself away, and Homelander, of course, attempts to chase him down. Lasers him off. It's a very, unfortunately, violent and scary, but also humorous scene where his lasers go off and accidentally slice the one actress who plays who does the Queen Maeve on Ice in half. And I'm like, I don't know if that's supposed to be a commentary and a jab on like how like kind of exposed actors are, but I just thought that was hilarious as somebody who just came out of acting school. And then you have that, and then you just have an absolute pandemonium where figure skaters are accidentally slicing each other's throats left and right. It was really, really funny. And then A-Train comes in last minute and saves Huey, which of course causes Huey to go in and lash out at his mom, who is still sitting vigil over his dad's bedside. What did you think of Huey's mom's confession that she's like, yeah, I kind of left out because I had I had a lot of depression, and I almost killed myself because raising kids is hard. What did you think about? I'm torn on that one. Moment and then another moment I'm torn on, because on the one hand I get where she's coming from, but on the other hand I'm like, yeah, I still don't know how much of that is an excuse. How much of that actually justifies what you did,
Yeah, and I think that's what I don't think the show expects like us to fully forgive her, but when she kind of puts it in the way that she did, whether you agree with her or not, you can at least understand that, like, okay, whatever she was going through, she just needed an escape, or else she, and obviously I get the whole point of not wanting to, have Huey know or find out, or to be kind of traumatized by that whole situation, and it makes sense. I mean, whatever. Doesn't sound like the Simon Pegg there deserved any of that, but
No, definitely not.
yeah.
Definitely
And,
not. Yeah.
but obviously it's in his character to, like, even after all this time, to like kind of have his more forgiving side.
Yep.
That makes sense that they
Yep.
they maybe would have been talking, especially if Huey's off, doing what he's been doing. I'm sure the guy's been lonely. I mean, they communicate that very well in the episode.
Exactly.
Like, you see all the
Huey-
messages he's left them. It's can't even give him a call back. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Huey is an empathetic lad, to say the least. But yeah, and it really sucks, obviously, because it's unfortunately another tragic point where it's like, yeah, I wanted to be, I always, everything I've done to protect my dad. But unfortunately, I just, by nature of it, I just haven't had time to talk with him as much, and really all he wants to do is just talk to me about his James Patterson novels, and now it's, I don't know.
It kind of speaks a lot how people can kind of work so hard to provide for the ones they care about until they kind of lose the ones they care about, and then it's
And what makes it even worse is that if they adapt this one storyline from the comics, in terms of, like, let's just say for everybody who's seen Breaking Bad and they know how Walt was able to get Jesse back on his side at the end of season 4, then now that kind of blew up in his face. Let's just say we're in for something similar involving Butcher, Huey, and Huey's dad, is all that I'm going to say, at the risk of spoiling a potential future storyline. So you have that. Next, Annie's meeting with Firecracker. That's another moment that I'm kind of torn on, because on the one hand, I get it, but on the other hand, like, wait, really? You're letting a childhood bully as your motivation? Like,
yeah,
what?
I don't have a problem with Firecracker hating her specifically,
Right.
but I think that whole flashback, especially because there was kind of no prelude whatsoever, and
Right.
obviously it's a little out of character for what we've come to expect with Annie. Like, especially with Annie's mom, I don't doubt that some whack shit happened to these pageants, because we know how they can be. But
oh yeah,
I don't know. The fact that there was no build up to it, I think kind of diminishes the blow there a bit.
Yep.
And I don't know, because Annie was built up to be this, this goody two shoes,
this morally
innocent,
righteous character. Exactly.
Right. And
well, not to mention the fact that just because of besides the Starlight thing, yeah, it's an identity thief situation where I'm like, I'm sorry, no amount of childhood bullying and trauma is an excuse to literally become a fucking criminal. Because there's a reason why Identity Thief might be the worst comedy I've ever seen. Because the entirety of that movie rests on the premise that we are supposed to feel bad for Melissa McCarthy's character because she got bullied as a kid for being fat. And because of that, that's supposed to justify her stealing other people's identities and ruining their lives. I don't know if like alt-right savior is supposed to be as egregious, but again, I'm sorry, bullying is not an excuse to really go all out as far as being an alt-right savior. So that was pretty weak motivation, if you ask me.
I almost feel like from a writing perspective, it's not that easy, or it's super easy to tweak. Where she, obviously Annie probably won, and maybe she was always the second place and could have still had that resentment.
Right,
regardless.
like exactly, like that's the storyline you go
and
with.
just kind of, and she's always been second best, was never selected for any of these top roles, but now she is given suddenly a platform where she's preaching all these conspiracy theories to these radical people, and she's getting the status she never had. And it's like, I think that would be more compelling than just,
I agree.
I think you bullied me, and I feel like that doesn't really change the course of her. Like,
it doesn't. It literally doesn't.
So.
If anything, it finally makes Annie like interesting again because because Annie hasn't really had like a solo one-off villain since Stormfront really last season. Obviously, yes, she hated Soldier Boy for the sake of hating Soldier Boy, but she didn't really have a personal vendetta against him the way that MM did,
I feel like we're gonna be seeing a little bit less of Annie after her whole face situation there. I've just noticed that it seems she's had a little less screen time in this season compared to others.
Yeah,
and I feel like that's
because
probably
of the plastic surgery, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think they do the best job they can with the makeup, but you can tell she obviously looks aged, and
but also like I never understood why the point of the plastic surgery was, because first of all, she's not even that old. She's 30. Like that's not that old,
Some of these celebrities, I'm sure, get so into their own heads with this stuff. There's some doctor sells them on it, or I'm sure we all
bought plastic surgery.
Yeah,
that was that. So we have the Frenchie and Kimiko thing, which is like, okay, they're going to track down the people who kidnapped her, and then she runs into one of the girls that she also knew and was fighting with, and then Frenchie is just tripped out the whole episode and is just having a whole trip about Colin and then all of his previous victims. It's like, oh no, awful.
I don't hate the subplot in itself. I hate it within the context of the rest of the show, just because. Again,
to me, it's the equivalent of the musical. Remember when they did that musical episode when Kimiko temporarily lost her powers to Soldier Boy last season? To me, it was like the equivalent of that. I'm like, we really don't.
Yeah, I feel like Kimiko and Frenchie are always the characters that they sometimes never know what they're going to do with.
Yes.
For not that they don't have their moments, and like when they do, like obviously they can really shine. But I feel like when they do shine is when they're already kind of supporting, the team stuff that's going. Like, you think about the penis scene, how like they were kind of scrambling there to fight Termite, and that's a great scene, right? And even the first scene of this episode when like Kimiko like gets her arm gnawed off and it's like slowly growing, and she jumps out the window, but her arm is too short to reach it. Yeah, like that's so great. Like
it was so
that
great.
Is like I think the perfect uses of their character.
Right. Well, not to mention the fact that they go out of their way because Kimiko's invulnerable to literally just have her like go through umpteen amounts of pain and torture.
I feel like
smashing at the sidewalk, shot in the head, arms chopped off. Like they know no bounds when it comes to that.
And I get with like, especially with these two characters in particular, like I mean, for the whole cast, it seems like they're really trying to hammer home the theme of like confronting your past, like for like every major character this season. And like, I don't mind them doing that, but I think it's a missed opportunity to not do that with Kimiko, either like season 2 or season 3, because like we already had that, especially in the beginning of season 2, we already had that explanation of like, more about her brother, where she came from, how they were like, trafficked when they were children and stuff. And now we've had all this huge gap between all that. And now we're going to revisit it. Right. And, or we're just starting to get hints that we're going to revisit it. And especially with Frenchie, I feel like, they're just, again, it's like, we know Frenchie's killed a lot of people, but like we never go into specifics, and now there's just this guy he's in love with that he killed his family.
It's like, do we really need this?
I'm sure it will tie in, like you said. I think
it will tie in
some way, but it's just like, again, I think there's enough setup in those first seasons where they could have pulled from something, or like that one French woman or whatever, like or
Right, who
Lamplighter,
who
or
is that?
Mallory's grandkids, I think would
Right.
also be like a great, like, what if
Right,
just it
exactly.
was, what if it
It's like,
was
well,
like
'cause
Mallory's daughter he was suddenly in love, or son,
right.
or whatever
Right,
that,
exactly. Like it goes back to kind of I think the issue with the comics was that Mother's Milk and Frenchie never really had a lot to do in the comics. They were always kind of just the side characters that were there to just kind of execute the plot of whatever
they were just there
madcap.
to make it more absurd, yeah.
Exactly. And so you kind of come into conflict when they become fully fleshed out characters that have to have these motivations. And obviously, yeah, there's been highs and lows. Like I said, Mother's Milk really came into his own, I thought, in season 2, and particularly last season. Frenchie, I thought, had some pretty good moments in season 2. But yeah, like I said, it's you have these characters where ultimately it is kind of in a way a Stranger Things problem, where because you are so hesitant to kill off main characters, you kind of become a little overcrowded, and by nature of that, you're gonna unfortunately have some plot lines where characters are just kind of there to take up space,
And I just feel like there's too many times like where Kimiko and Frenchie are kind of off doing their own thing, and it's like it doesn't offer enough substance, or it's kind of just like, like, okay, like this is kind of fun, but like why can't they just be with like the main gang, and like, cuz and keep the plot moving, cuz not, I think the show is pretty great overall with pacing, but the times that it does kind of falter is those times when it's just kind of Kimiko and Frenchie kind of doing their own thing. Like, I remember that one side plot randomly of Kimiko just like killing random people, just like,
Right.
and we kind of really don't revisit that. And I feel like
Right.
that's like, she ripped that
But
dude's
also,
face off, and it's
right,
just
right.
like,
But also, it's like Kimiko fighting random people, and then Frenchie's just tripped out. It's like, what?
right.
Like,
And
we're actually
it's
doing
kind
this?
of like, I get Frenchie is traumatized, but I just feel like we haven't had enough, like, it's not really a payoff because there's no build up to begin with. So
Exactly.
I think, like, especially like, yeah, like, I think that is an area where this season kind of falls a little flat. But
Yeah.
I,
Yeah, it's unfortunate. All right, let's get to the last plot line before we wrap it up and get out of here. Butcher and Ryan. So, like I said, Butcher manages
big
to
one.
lure Ryan to his place. This is my favorite part of this episode. This is my favorite part of that and the fought on ice, but that was just ridiculously spectacular. Yeah. So Butcher manages to get Ryan to come to his place by contacting him through a Vought video game, which was clearly a take on Injustice: Gods Among Us, which I love that.
And his username just was so on point.
It's
like,
so great.
I know.
And so Ryan comes, meets up with him. They end up playing some foosball. Butcher originally, has some drugs that were given to him by Kessler to put in his cookies. And unfortunately, he ends up they end up having a bonding moment. It's just really nice just seeing them actually get to bond. Now that the wool has kind of been pulled off, Ryan knows who Butcher really is. But he also knows who Homelander is. And he's kind of starting to see that both of these guys aren't that great, but kind of at the very least, one does want the best for me, and the other one kind of just wants to use me to satisfy himself, And he's starting to realize that, he's a little older now. He's 13 or 12 or something like that. So he's not like a little kid anymore. And it was a really touching moment. And it's probably the most vulnerable that Urban has ever been as Billy Butcher. Urban was born to play the part of Billy Butcher, and I had some qualms with him at the beginning, as far as the Butcher that he was playing for the show was not the Butcher in the comics, who was just an absolutely brutal, vile person who didn't give a fuck about using anyone or everything or anything to his advantage. And this Butcher definitely has a lot more empathy and a lot more heart than the Butcher in the comics.
He's way more layered than the guy in the comics.
Absolutely. And you saw that right with the connections with his brother and his father that we saw in flashbacks over the last couple of seasons. His father also played by Lord of the Rings alumni John Noble. But yeah, this is it's a really touching moment. It's a really touching moment. You see it in his eyes. He sees once again, it's more now. He's starting to appreciate Ryan more than just as a living reminder of Becca, who, again, that's the entire motivating reason as to why he was willing to put his life on the line for this kid, So, yeah. And I love the kind of the moments that they trade, where Ryan is clearly traumatized by killing this dude, and Butcher kind of confesses to him that he's like, yeah, we kind of, we're all messed up. We all have some tough stuff. I've got this cancer, but it's kind of not about what we do. It's about how we kind of constantly atone for it, because we as humans, we're going to screw up, And I loved it so much. And clearly Ryan got to Butcher because Butcher ends up chucking the cookies. He doesn't end up giving them to him, And then unfortunately we see the ripple effects of that when Ryan goes back and Homelander just has a complete break from reality, where he literally throws a temper tantrum that Ryan would dare to choose Butcher over him, And then he ends up having a full-on conversation with his other, I don't know, the angel and the devil on his shoulder, whatever the fuck it is in his twisted mind, where they're basically telling him, yeah, you have to go back to the source. What that means, I don't know, but I'm having flashbacks to him in the cabin with Doppelganger in season 2 when he was pretending to be Stillwell.
Yeah, everyone's just revisiting their past this season. Like
Yep.
I like it. I like it. I think it's a really interesting because every character's kind of got trauma, which I think is really cool to explore. It's just more of like, do we need it for every character, or
Right.
could we have done it earlier for some characters? But I think especially with Butcher and the mistakes he's made with Ryan and and a couple others that I think is really gonna drive home the I don't know where I was going with this, but maybe the overarching conflict of the season as a whole, and I think we'll tie into whatever kind of big conflict they have in the finale.
Exactly. The way that I see it is the first season is all about revenge. The second season is all about the what's it called? The falsities of of advertising. The third and kind of how that can be manipulated. The third season is all about what's it called, drug addiction and kind of the lengths that you're willing to go to in order to solve your goals. And this season is definitely going to be a reflection heavy season for sure. Like I said, it's very much a setup season. We are in the end game now. They are setting up for the final confrontation between Butcher, Homelander, the humans versus the Supes. What's going to go down after that, we don't know. But we are in the end game. But like I said, we do see that unfortunately Butcher's decision may not have been the smartest, as he ends up getting told kind of by Kessler at the end, when he's like, yeah, we kind of are between we kind of are between a rock and a hard place here, in the sense of where we either have to somehow train Ryan to be able to take down Homelander, or we have to kill him before Homelander ends up before he ends up growing up to become another Homelander. And he also knows about Butcher's cancer. He's like, hi, I'm a CIA agent. By the way, can we talk about, I love the dynamic between Karl Urban and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I don't know what it is about Eric Kripke, the showrunner of Supernatural, bringing in Supernatural alumni. It was Jensen Ackles last season. That was Jeffrey Dean Morgan this season. I would not be surprised if he finds a way to get Jared Padalecki in there for the final season. I would not be surprised at all if he manages to do that. And just having Karl Urban just have insane chemistry with them. Like, I never thought of Karl Urban and Jeffrey Dean Morgan being a pair that I needed in my life, but it's so well done and masterful here. Like, I love it. I absolutely love it. So, oh man. So what are your thoughts?
There's not a single bad actor in this show.
No, there really isn't. So yeah, as far as standouts for me for these first 3 episodes, Jeffrey Dean Morgan definitely, Jesse D. Usher really improving, honestly, as an actor throughout the show. I still remember seeing him in this Nickelodeon movie about these 3 dorks who's the video game that they play.
Oh,
and you know which movie I'm talking about,
I know
right?
what it's called. I don't know what it's called, but
I remember seeing Jesse D. Usher. He was in that. He was in the second Independence Day, and he was in this terrible Jim Caviezel Catholic movie about a football team that had an unbeatable streak. He was in that too. And then I remember seeing him cast in The Boys. I'm like, what? I'm like, I know him. But then he ends up, I'm like, oh wow, he's actually really good. But yeah, he's really good this season. And then Susan Hayward as Sister Sage is awesome. And obviously Valerie Curry is just gorgeous as Firecracker. Oh man, they were very intentional with the names here for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, Anthony's a star, always delivering.
And always delivered. Like I said, Anthony and Urban, they're the reason to watch the show. Jack Quaid as well. And people sleep on Jack Quaid because he doesn't have as much of a colorful, I will say, personality and performance as Urban or a star, but he's still just as good. Yeah. He's still just as good. Sure. And also Laz Alonso, still consistent as Mother's Milk. He really has impressed me over the last couple of seasons, and I really enjoy his character. So, with that being said, that's it. Those are the first 3 episodes. That is our official recap. We will be recapping every episode of The Boys for the remainder of the next 5 weeks as well. Like I said, it's always... What is going on, people? Happy Sunday morning. It is kind of hard to believe that it's been a year since The Flash came out, which is kind of insane when you consider just how much controversy that movie had. So we've gone from the summer where everybody was watching movies every week to now the summer where barely anybody is watching anything in a theater. But I'm joined by my good friend Polly. Polly, happy to have you on the podcast for the first time.
Hi, thank you for having me. Finally.
I know. Well,
For the first time in
Yes.
forever.
yes, that. No, well, to clue the audience in as to what originally was, Paul, this was not originally supposed to be Polly's first appearance. We were originally going to have her on for Wish back in November when that came out. And then, well, we saw the movie and we were like, yeah, we can do better. We can do better. And then I ended up talking with Luke about Napoleon, and it ended up being a much more fun time. So, Polly, so happy to have you here. Finally, we've had so many memories together. I think you are the fifth or sixth. Actually, no, I think it's more than that. Alumni from the Neighborhood Playhouse that I've had on. Yeah, because I'm trying to think now. I've had Luisa on, I've had Karn on, I've had Jeremy, Mike. I've had like one or two other people, I think. I'm pretty sure, but
okay. It's okay because this is my zone, so no one
this
can
is your
probably
zone.
say
This
better than me.
exactly. This is your specialty.
Okay.
This is your area. You know a lot about. We're talking about Inside Out 2, which is, I mean, like we got to break this down from the start, right? So obviously, like, the Pixar canon has obviously been very, very special to us growing up specifically because we are like the prime demographic. We're the ones that like grew up with it, right? Toy Story came out like shortly before we were born, but but other than that first one, we've pretty much like literally grown up with these movies, from Bugs Life all the way through to Elemental last year. We've been watching, I'm like, I don't know. I think there's only 3 Pixar movies that I haven't seen. I haven't seen The Good Dinosaur, and I haven't seen any of the Cars sequels. And and I didn't watch Lightyear either because I'm like, yeah, that didn't look good. I'm like, that didn't look good at all. But like, has there been any Pixar sequels that you haven't seen?
I think I haven't watched Buzz Lightyear, and that's it. I think that's the only one that I'm missing.
Yeah. So the kind of the way that I've broken it down is that there's like different tiers of Pixar movies, right? You have like the undisputed GOAT.
Did you watch Onward?
Yeah, I watch Onward.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen Onward. Yeah.
Perfect.
So there's the undisputed GOAT class of Pixar movies, right? There's the movies that are almost in the GOAT class, but not quite. And then there's what I call the mediocre sequel category. There is another mediocre category because unfortunately some of their originals have not quite been up to stuff. But it's really kind of distressing where after Toy Story 3, they pretty much kind of spent a decade just making sequels. And like they were of varying quality depending on who you ask. But for the most part, I would say a lot of those sequels, at least for me, did not live up to kind of the expectation that was set during what I call the golden era of Pixar, which is that 95 to 2010 run when they had no misses at all. So kind of, but a one shining spot in that was right in the middle in 2015 was Inside Out, which was kind of like this bizarre revolution as far as like kind of the point in time with which this came out in our lives. Cause that was 2015. That was the year that we graduated high school. Yeah. So like, and then you had this movie come out and goes so far above and beyond as far as like, because we're already kind of used to the Pixar formula of them having these insanely original and really creative stories that also kind of tackle at like the root of maturity. They're like they're like these stories that are like made to age with time. So like we watch them as kids, we have this one viewpoint, and then we get older and we keep coming back to these movies because they have like this completely different message. What was a Pixar movie that you would say like when you came back to it like as being older, like as a teenager or like as a young adult now, and you're like, wow, this like the movie, like what's the movie that like really just hits you in a whole different way?
From when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Nemo was. I don't know. I think that I have kept them like so alive in my life, like all of them. So they all have hit it like different,
Right.
There were ones, for example, Bugs. I used to hate it.
Bugs Life.
Yes. But now I see it and it's like, oh, Fleek and things like that, It gets like nostalgic. But this one, I have a lot of things to say about Inside Out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Inside Out is like...
And Inside Out, like the sequel, it hit different. I don't know. Okay, I don't know where you want to start, but I don't know if it's different because I'm a woman and Riley's a woman.
Right.
Like she's a she. So I don't know if that like hit it different,
Well, we're going to lead into it kind of basically. So the thing about Inside Out that kind of made that, I would say, kind of a step above and beyond the classic Pixar canon, if you will, is that like Pixar was always about like obviously it was always about finding, humanity and empathy in different, non-human organisms, toys, monsters, bugs, cars, rats in the case of Ratatouille, going above and beyond with superheroes. I think The Incredibles was like their only movie that they did in that run that was about human characters. I'm pretty sure. But then, so you get all the way through, at least until Up, and then you get all the way through to Toy Story 3, right? And then you kind of have a couple years of weirdness with Cars 2, Brave, which feels more like a Disney princess movie than a Pixar movie, Monsters University. And then you have Inside Out 2, and it's probably one of their most inventive and original premises they've come up with yet, which is where they're basically okay, what if we took the emotions inside somebody's head and gave them personalities? And so
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but the way that they explain the movie with all these the memories and the core islands and things like that, that's how our brain works.
Literally.
I don't know how much research they did with psychiatrists and psychologists and doctors, because that's the way our neurons connect, and the dopamine and all of this stuff, that it's just that's how our brain works, and it's just fantastic. I really appreciate, and it's I don't know, it's lovely.
As far as Pixar world building goes, because world building is something that obviously this company and this animation, it's part of what's made it such a staple of our lives. It's always so insanely in depth, and they always go out of their way in order doing research. Obviously they told about with Finding Nemo, researching the different species of fish so they could get it right, and with Ratatouille, obviously with the meals that they cook up and everything. But you're 100% on the money there, because it's so insane how accurately it captures the human brain. Again, it's supposed to be a fictional world. So that already kind of gave Inside Out 2 this extra level of meaning, just as far as its application towards something going further beyond just storytelling for kids, essentially. And to the point where it's literally been used in therapeutic practices with kids in terms of helping them identify their emotions and how they're feeling in the moment. It's pretty insanely original and inventive there. And that's before we even got into the story, which is basically capturing the experience of what it's like to be a little girl, specifically going through a massive life change. So you've got the outer world, the external story of what's actually happening in the real world. And then you've got the story of the emotions that are fueling it. So you got this already working on so many different sexual layers, right? And also, I think that what made the movie special on top of everything else is the fact that of all the Pixar premises that lended itself to more sequels of okay, there's actually an avenue where this story could go that will actually be kind of inventive in a similar way. And I'm just going to say this right off the bat, in a very similar way to Toy Story, and how the reason why that trilogy works is because it lends itself so well to a character growth over time, with the toys being 1 and 2 kind of act as this kind of package, but then you have this extended period of time between 2 and 3, and now you have this entire group that were little kids with the first 2 Toy Stories that are going into middle school and high school with the third one when that comes out. And it's because you have all that time, you now feel you relate even more to the characters on screen. And that's kind of similar to what they do here right off the bat, which is why when I first saw that the next Pixar sequel they were doing was Inside Out 2, I didn't get mad, because I'm okay, of all the sequels,
you have a story to go to and the growth, and
exactly, because now we're following Riley as a preteen going into a teenager, and all the different emotions and kind of struggles that come with that. And I'm okay, regardless of what's happening here, this at least lends itself to continuing the story, and it doesn't just feel as we know like a shameless Pixar cash grab where they're trying to continue it but it doesn't have the same effect. Kind of my relationship with the Pixar sequels, Monsters University, I think is that movie has actually aged a lot better than I thought, because it's a different direction than you would have thought. They do a prequel instead of a sequel, showing time in college, and also it's the only movie that I've ever seen that shows it's okay to drop out of college and still go forward in your life. I've never seen another movie that does that.
Can we say spoilers here?
I mean, I usually run pretty fast and loose with spoilers. I usually am not. I usually don't keep too close to the vest there. But
because for the end of this one, we have Jeremy and I. We were can I go there?
Oh yeah, go there.
She shouldn't have been accepted on the team.
Oh, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Oh my god, that will be such a different ending. And
I like I said, I have a lot of problems with this movie and specifically with this ending, to say the least, because what I will say, kind of bringing it back to Inside Out 2, is that while I was impressed with the fact that they were still kind of able to continue with the world building, and I thought a lot of the new devices that they added to the storytelling I thought was really cool. And as far as like the breakdown of the story, right, I'm like, okay, it's a similar enough structure story-wise to the first one, but it's got enough new characters and enough new avenues that it is going well. But how they utilize that, I'm not exactly sure that I was a fan of, because there's having a good idea for a story and then there's how you execute it. And I have to say that the execution this time, it felt a little bit sloppier. It didn't feel as precise. It didn't have the emotional oomph that the first one did, because like the way that I described the first one is that the first one is simultaneously the funniest movie that you've ever seen and also the most gut-wrenchingly sad movie you've ever seen. Like that ending is heartbreaking. Like when you say goodbye to Bing Bong in that first one, you are crying. Like I remember seeing the first one. I'm like when that happened in the first time, I'm like, hold it together. I look over at all my friends and with her crying. Like,
well, I have to say that I was weeping, and I've seen a lot of videos of women weeping. Like I think that most of women that have had anxiety, that's how we feel. Like, how when she sits in the hockey and then she feels like she's having that's like an anxiety attack.
That was an anxiety attack, absolutely.
So I've seen like a lot of women like being related to Riley and to like everything, and for me it got really personal, the movie. I
that's the thing. I can tell that this was going to be very, very personal to a lot of people. And like immediately off the bat, just based on what I saw in the trailers, I'm like, okay, at the very least, I know I'm not going to hate this because this is already adding new elements that are interesting enough and progress the story at a natural pace. So just as far as the clue people in, as far as like what actually happens in this one. So you've got, again, Riley's a preteen now. She's what? Like, did they say how old she is? She's like what, 12 years old, 13 years old in this now? 13 years old, right? So she's end of middle school, going into high school. Literally the movie opens with, after they introduce like kind of the new like device as far as like how they formed Riley's personality. Literally in the movie opens with a puberty alarm going off. And I'm like, okay, already we're back. We're back.
That detail of the little white thing of the personality, that was beautiful. That made her
I think they modeled that after like a neural network in a brain. I think they took a map of a neural network in a brain and put that out. It was I'm like, okay. I'm like, they're still putting this. I'm like, there's still definitely a level of detail and attention to this world building, because like there's so many different Pixar worlds now, as I call it, within like, the Pixar multiverse. And obviously we know about the Pixar theory as well. But I really think that Inside Out 2 is my favorite. I think it's the most creative. I think it's the most inventive. And I think because it has the most real world and real life application, I think it's my favorite of the Pixar world. I think Soul comes very close as far as Soul's kind of examination of like the depth of like, like if Inside Out is the inside of somebody's brain, then Soul literally examines, their soul. It's, trust me, that movie is still like the most existential movie that I've ever seen. But So I thought that was really great. And as far as so once again, similar to the first one, you have the outside plot and the inside plot. You've got the outside plot, which is Riley's going to a hockey camp, and she discovers on the way there that that unfortunately she will not be with her two friends that she's been with for the majority of the time, but she has the opportunity to be with like the cool older team, and I thought that was perfect.
Yeah, but I kind of want Disney to be. I don't know if she was going to be like a lesbian or things like that.
There were definitely hints there. There were definitely hints there, to say the least.
I know. And the Deep Secret, I hated that the Deep Secret.
Yeah, there was no payoff there. What the fuck?
They could have done so much with it.
Oh, but here's the thing. Because I was waiting, right? I was so glad that you brought that up, because I'm like, wait, I was waiting. I'm like, because they introduced that scene, right? The Deep Secret comes in, and I'm like, and then the movie ends. I'm like, what was the payoff? What was the Deep Secret? And it just says not yet. And I'm like, wait, is it saving up for a third one? Like, what's going on here? I was so confused by that.
On the third one, we want her to go to college and we want romance. Like, you need to have that.
It has to. Like, but will Pixar go? Because here is Pixar's problem. Pixar is ultimately still trying to cater to both us, the people who grew up with it, but also still trying to get in new kids. And that's a problem, because new kids, like little kids, if they make like a Pixar movie, like they already tried that with Monsters University, and I give them credit for it, but like how much are they actually going to be able to do with a college romance movie, you know? Because there are some things that happen in that you cannot put in a kid's movie.
Yeah, I was, as soon as the movie ended, I told Jeremy, like, this is not a kids movie, like not for like 6, 5, 7-year-olds.
Definitely not.
Kids that grew up like with the
right. It's for us. It's another
and
Pixar movie made for us.
It's going to be good for parents to approach your teen kids now, blah, blah, blah. But it's not for the new, kids.
Yeah, definitely not.
Like Pixar getting out only like one movie and being like a sequel for like you're losing like those kids,
Yes.
So it's tricky. It's tricky.
Yeah. And as for the inside the headquarters plot, we have the addition of some new emotions as well that all of a sudden just start to like come in and start to mess things up. And of course that means for more voiceover talent as well. You've got the first one. You've also got a couple of last minute casting changes as well.
No.
For certain of the emotions. You have Amy Poehler back as Joy. You've got Phyllis Smith from The Office back as Sadness. And you've got Louis Black back as Anger. Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling, though, unfortunately took their departure for this one. And instead, this time, you have Liz Lapira as Disgust and Tony Hale as Fear. So, of the new emotions that come in, you have Anxiety. By Maya Hawke, Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's daughter from Stranger Things Season 3. You have Envy, voiced by Ayo Edebiri from The Bear. Yeah. You have Embarrassment, voiced by Paul Walter Hauser from Cobra Kai. And you have Ennui, which I don't know why they didn't just call that boredom, but and they just made her
the experience que te pasa.
Exactly. I was about to. I wish we could have had Laura on this one as well. But
I read something that the French had something to do with the Easter eggs. I've been trying to look for them and things like that.
It's a Ratatouille Easter egg?
I don't know, because they said something also about Onward, but I haven't been able to connect them.
Yeah.
And I also couldn't find the A1112, like the studio number.
Right.
They always. I haven't.
Right.
Been able to.
Oh my god! I love that we both took a sip of.
I know, right?
That's hilarious.
That's very miraculous.
Like the viewing audience does not understand. We are basically we
spend so much time together. Yeah,
so much time together. That's what makes it so perfect. But yeah. So you have the addition of new emotions, right? And of course, with new emotions, there's going to come a lot of new feelings.
You forgot nostalgia.
Okay, but the movie knows what it's doing. The movie knows what it's doing there, where they have nostalgia come in and they're like, no, nostalgia, get out of here. Like, you're not here yet. They're like, you still have like a couple more years and at least 2 college graduations to get through. And I'm like, no, stop. I'm like, we just graduated from another higher learning institution. I can't. I feel personally attacked right here. That was great. That was just like a great little insert right there. So
she looked like Angela Lansbury or something like that.
You know what's funny about that? I thought that they modeled her after the inspiration for the Barbie character for the Barbie movie, like the older, like the creator of Barbie. Yeah, I thought that was kind of what it was modeled after. But hey Jeremy, what's up?
Sorry.
There he is. I was waiting. I'm like, oh yeah, there he is. Oh, this is great. This is live on YouTube. I just hope you know that. Oh man. Luke is commenting some vintage Pixar in this. But yeah, all right, we're getting this train back on track. Okay, but so of course with the new emotions are going to clash with the old emotions, and then the new emotions throw the old emotions out of headquarters, and the old emotions have to go on another journey throughout Riley's subconscious to get back to headquarters, very similar to how Joy and Sadness had to in the last one. So I mean, there's the actual like plot mechanics, right? All the new devices that they add as well, the journey that they kind of go through. A couple of like very much needed character moments that I was very, very happy they did. Like I'm glad that we finally saw Joy like freaking out. The new emotions, right?
The new emotions, yes.
So, I mean, just as far as nailing the portrayal and like kind of the addition of those emotions during like a tumultuous period of someone's life during puberty, I thought that was like perfect as far as like kind of the whole how anxiety both dictates kind of a lot of the initial mistakes you make in that preteen phase, so kind of being like, because it's the addition of like a necessary hormone that your body does need as far as like its survival tactics getting older, but it can kind of be a little bit crippling, when you're first experiencing that. And I thought that introducing that element was great. The other thing that I thought that it did very well as far as Because again, like you were talking about from the female perspective as well, that's one of the things that the first one nailed so hard. And that's also something that I think this one nails very well, is capturing the female experience going through those different phases of life. I thought
yes.
it was
I thought that the show, like the selection of the new emotions I was really scared when they say like presenting the new emotions, because you have like this wide variety that they can be just like very similar in the emotions, and we have like the good emotions or the positive and the negative emotions in this like psychology word. That I was like scared of them, but like these 4 that they added, they were like really specific, and they complemented like sadness and ¿cómo se llama el rosita? The one that looks like a pink mushroom. Embarrassment. Like they go well together, but they're not the same. But they're they
yes.
chose like good.
Yes, I agree. Like each of the new emotions, right? That's exactly it. The way that I'm thinking about it is that like it's a combination. It's like each of the new emotions is like a mix of like 2 or 3 of like the older emotions. You know, like fear relates to anxiety as well, but anxiety is more so like kind of Joy's nemesis at first, because it's like anxiety is like everything that like Joy is trying to be and everything, as far as like how they're both trying to help Riley to a certain extent. Embarrassment and sadness, like you were saying. I'm trying to. I think it was like disgust and ennui were like kind of going together at one point, and then
disgust and envy, no? And then ennui and
envy, ennui, and then exactly. So ennui and anger. That's right. Yeah.
And the purple one. What's the name of? Also, I cannot wait to see it in Spanish. I want to see all the jokes. I want to hear the voices. You know, I want to know those characters also in my native language,
right?
Because they can be. It can be like different sometimes,
right? Yeah,
I can't wait to see it in Spanish too.
Yeah, and half the movie's charm also is the jokes, because besides them being puns on the human brain, which is just that I thought was just really great. Like some of the new additions that they made, because so the last one where we had like the world building of Riley's subconscious, you had like Imagination Land, and like which like kind of captures like all the different like thoughts and you know different thought patterns. This one I love like the new additions that they had to the world, where it's like the vault, which is like all the hidden repressed stuff, which is like a character that like she watched like a Blue's Clues thing that she watched growing up, a useless video game character that she played that was like supposed to be like but like very really stoic, and then the Dark Secret obviously, and then going through Imagination Land, and then the Pillow Fort, which had been like converted into like the artist studio, which that was blatantly poking fun at how Disney mistreated its animators. I'm like, oh wow, we're getting deep with this one. I'm like, we're getting really deep with this one. So like all of that was, and like the new additions that they added, like I remember 3 very vividly: the stream of conscious, the sarcasm, and the brainstorm. Those killed me. Those killed me.
The brainstorm was fabulous. Yes,
like, it's those little elements that like show them like, okay, the attention to detail here is just phenomenal. And also, as far as on the outside world, how Riley is again trying to like, how the emotions are once again dictating Riley's actions in the real world, where she's trying to like, fit in with the cool popular girls and all that, but how she's like driven to be number one. And like, but I like how they also don't make it seem like it's anything that Riley wouldn't do. Like there's nothing that she does here that's like super out of character as far as how she's growing, but also like not make her do anything like crazy rash, like they still are making it within the realm of reality, even though we're witnessing like fictional emotions traveling through a fictional made up personification of one's brain. It's like the attention to detail there is still, I think, what sets this above a lot of the other lesser Pixar sequels, I would say.
Also thinking in Riley's personality, she's an only child.
Right.
She's an only child. She's a female. She's like this. She's not like perfect, but for example, me, that I was like the oldest out of 3 and the only girl, and then I played all the sports and blah, blah, blah. So she wants to be like this type of good daughter for her parents, so it's right. Like that's why it feels so personal, and I think like that's why a lot of women are going to feel more like related to her than the men, because I watched it with Jeremy, and he's like the way that he received the movie, it was like different,
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because what I will say is that, again, as another male, I will say that for me, I think kind of what really intrigued me about this and what I really appreciated about this as well is that I think, unlike something like Turning Red, which I think was the first attempt at trying to like capture like, the young girl going through puberty experience, I think what that movie was missing that this movie definitely still has is that movie was missing the depth to me. I think that they really where that movie tried, and I think for the most part succeeded, was with the mother-daughter relationship. I thought that was kind of where that movie thrived, and like capturing like that sort of specific immigrant experience. I think what that was missing was the main kind of character, the main character, I think, motivation. It didn't feel as personal to me, and that I think is kind of where like the difference in gender really mattered in terms of like, young girls trying to get like, tickets to see a band. Like, obviously that's not something that I'm gonna relate to, But what I think that this movie did really well was demonstrating, especially like you were saying, not for both the female perspective, but also like, again, like I've had anxiety, I've had panic attacks before, like capturing that feeling. That is a universal thing that anybody can relate to, regardless of gender. That's the thing. And that, to me, is what has always made Pixar special. And that is what has always set them so far above and beyond, is at the end of the day, their stuff can be watched by everybody. And even though their most recent efforts... But say it, this anxiety attack and big, so kind of as far as problems that I go, like I said, not all the jokes hit. I personally don't know if, again, just compared to the first one, they were able to make because I'm realizing now that a lot of this isn't a bad movie. A lot of the problems that I have with this, it really just kind of is the fact that like it just doesn't hit me as hard emotionally as the first one did. But at the same time, like I'm at a different point in my life now. Last time, when the last one came out, I was graduating high school. Now I'm almost 27. I'm almost we're close to 30. Let's just be honest there. We're not little kids anymore. So kind of obviously I'm at a different point in my life, so I'm not gonna have the same perspective on this.
That's something that hit me so hard in the movie. Like I was sitting and watching it, and I was like, I'm almost like I actually thought about it. Like I'm a grown ass adult, like seeing these movies,
literally,
and I was like, whoa,
yeah. Like I'm looking around at the people who I'm seeing the movie with, and I'm like, these are all kids, and I'm like, I think it's just another harsh reminder that I'm like, yeah, we're not kids anymore, but again, that's the magic of these movies, is that you can still see these movies at any age and still relate to them, and that's kind of why. Again, it's what continues to make Pixar special, and it's why I'm going to continue to watch Pixar movies even into my 60s. There's a reason why the people who introduced me to Pixar were my grandparents of all people, because my grandparents saw Monsters Inc. when they were in like their 50s and 60s, and they related to that because anybody can relate, because regardless of what it's about, anybody can relate to the workplace. Anybody can relate to the nuclear family. Anybody can relate to, romance, like universal, relatable things. And while Inside Out 2, it's not like completely universal, I still think that it does a good enough job as far as like getting really, really close. So that's why for me, I'm not going to say that this is like one of the all-time, like this doesn't make the Pixar Hall of Fame, as I say, but it comes pretty damn close. And I'm giving this 4 out of 5 stars for me.
I also gave it a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the ending, they could have done so much. Like the
ending. That's kind of where it comes down.
I don't know if I'm saying as a teacher, I don't know. I don't know.
I wasn't a fan. I wasn't a fan, honestly. I'm like, they could have done something a lot more devastating, I think. And I think that, and I don't know. I think that just I think it was kind of resolved too easily. And it just, again, it doesn't have the same emotional impact. Like the last one, you felt like if they don't get back to headquarters, like Riley, like the world is gonna literally end. Like you literally had freaking the core elements like falling off, and it still had the whole, an old piece has to like go away in order for growth to happen. I still think they preserved that, but it didn't have the same impact. And I'm like, like you just did one more draft of the ending. You could have had it.
I know. I did freak out a little. Like when they take out the white neuron that made the personality, and the orange one was growing.
Right.
And then like I did feel some like kind of rush, but then at the end when they merge like all of these like forgotten like
Right,
memories,
the forgotten
that
bad
boys
memories. Yeah.
just keep throwing away, and everything turns like purple and all these colors, I was like,
Yeah.
that's how the brain works. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know.
that was cool. That was really cool. Like, it's
And it's
insane,
only going
honestly.
to help a lot of therapists to like give therapy and you know.
As if they didn't already have the first one. It's
like yeah, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But like I said, what I will say is that even though again they didn't necessarily nail the ending for sure, and it's no Toy Story 2 for sure. As far as like setting us up for like what could be a really baller third movie, like I really, really want to see the transition now from like teenhood into like young adulthood. Like I again like the kind of the tracks that they've laid for the destination as far as where these movies could go. I still continue to stand by it that this is the Pixar story that lends itself most to a multi-movie story since Toy Story.
Yeah. Also, like the details when the island family, when they present the island family and it's like this tiny and it's like less colorful and things like that, like those kind of stuff. That's another good that I remember. That's good.
I also thought they were great poking fun at the Thought Police in 1984. I thought that was hilarious. Just like little tidbits here and there. Yeah. And then also, like, I love the references back to the first one when they were like going through like the barrage of like different songs that they were thinking through, and they brought back the gum jingle from the last one. Oh man, again, it's details like these, and I'm like, okay, this is still so far above and beyond the standard Pixar fare. Oh man.
Yeah. And then as Easter eggs, I've seen you were talking about Red,
Turning Red.
Yeah. The boy band. What's the name of the boy band?
Oh, I don't. That shows you how forgettable it is. I don't even remember the name of the boy band. But Riley, that's the boy band that she's talking about, right?
The poster. Yeah.
That is his name, boy band. I thought so.
That I remember.
I thought so because I'm like, when she said that band name, I'm like, wait, that sounds familiar. Why? Where have I heard that before?
I didn't saw the truck. You know how the truck is always in the movies?
Yeah. The Pixar truck.
The Pixar truck, I didn't saw it. And I haven't seen like videos about it.
Yeah. Don't worry. We'll dive down the rabbit hole later on as far as the Pixar theory.
Yeah, I want to know where they put it in, like where this one fits in.
Yeah, definitely. Hold on, wait. Before we get out of here, Jeremy's back there a little bit. Jeremy, get on here. Yeah, real quick, get on here. I want your like 5-second thoughts on Inside Out too, as my resident expert.
I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was fine. Literally just hit the middle fine. It felt like it was more concerned with gags than like the weight. Like I felt like the first Inside Out had so much weight to it. And overhearing your conversation, I think it's about distance of time too. I felt like we were so far away, at least me, from the age that Riley is in the first one when it first came out.
Yeah. And
now that I'm 26 and that character is like 13.
Yeah.
It feels of just the distance of that. I'm like, I feel like I'm too far away from that to even connect to that anymore.
Right.
That's me as a man, a black dude.
But for me, it was like that was Polly, you know. So it was like, like I wanted to hug like young Polly, like watching that movie, and I hope that a lot of girls and kids and parents and things like that can relate and can like not live whatever we live through without any like therapy or like all the knowledge that it's like now out that we grew up like traumatized.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that was the other bit that I was going to ask as well is, do you think that like Pixar is kind of losing its kind of universality? Because that's the whole thing, is Pixar always like was supposed to be like universal, that anybody could watch it and kind of relate to it. Do you think that they're kind of losing that as they're picking more like very specific areas to focus on with the storytelling?
I think they're playing both, because I don't know. I like the specificities, like for example with Coco, you know, they have done good things.
Yeah.
And they are trying to include all these cultures and whatever and things like that. But I don't know. it's taking them a lot to do like one movie after another one.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Well, especially because their movies are so expensive now. That's the thing. Each one of these movies has a budget of like a Marvel movie. Like I think
they're trying to push animation. That's the other thing I noticed with every movie. The animation.
Yeah, they're pushing animation hard, probably because they're using more AI in order to make the animation too. So
don't say that. Don't say that.
Listen, I'm just saying what everybody kind of already knows already. You know, there's a reason why they're pushing. They're like, and I noticed, I'm like, wow, Netflix is putting a big emphasis on its animated movies. I've never seen them put up this big an emphasis on this. So
they're AI and the crap out of everything.
Yeah.
There was a part where I asked Jeremy, like, how did they do that? Like, when all the balls calm down, and I was like, how did they like animate that? And like, I was like,
there was a lot there. They were again. Pixar's laid off a lot of its staff in the last year after the strikes. That these companies have been doing a lot of and they. Jeffrey Katzenberg himself even said, the CEO of DreamWorks even said that a lot of jobs that animators have are going to go to AI in the near future. He's like, that's not like an if, that's a fact. That's going to happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're already seeing the results of it in the movies. So yeah, it's sad, honestly, but hey, we'll still get some good looking stuff out of it for sure. I mean, Netflix's slate looks pretty good, honestly. Like that Ultraman Rising, the fact that Arcane season 2, that's going to be the last season. Like, I mean, it's going to get, we're going to get some good stuff. Animation, I think, still is rife for opportunity, to say the least. But I think what it's going to be, where the emphasis is going to be, it's going to be more on concepts and sole creators rather than like the individual animators, the way that it was, as things become so much more automated going forward. And we'll see how it affects the storytelling, honestly. That's kind of all that we can look forward to, honestly, as time goes on.
What are the next Disney movies?
Like, well, the next immediate Disney movie is going to be Moana 2 in November.
Okay,
yeah.
Yes.
And then as far as Pixar, as far as Pixar, we've got Elio is set for next year. And then the next couple ones that Disney announced, that Disney and Pixar announced, the three big ones are Zootopia 2, which is next year, Toy Story 5, and Frozen 2. I think Toy Story 5 is next year.
Honey.
And Frozen 3, sorry. And I think Frozen 3 is going to be 2026, I believe. And they've also announced a couple of other untitled original efforts as well for 2026 and beyond. As far as everything else that's coming out, that I'm not too sure about. But
will Tom Hanks ever say no?
No, he will not. Not as Woody. Listen. At this point, they're gonna take his and Tim Allen's vocal recordings and do what they did with James Earl Jones for Star Wars. They're just gonna automate it for future efforts. Exactly, 100%. 100%.
Oh, Snow White. They need to stop with the live actions. Come on.
That I agree with, but I've been saying that for years now. I've been boycotting those live action movies for years. Like
they can make a bunch load of more money, re-releasing the old movies because those movies are short.
Yes.
They don't realize they can make so much money in a bunch of days.
Exactly. They got to hamp down, especially since we're entering a lot of the 30-year anniversaries for the classic Disney ones for the 90s run. Like Lion King is 30 this year. Next year, Pocahontas turns 30. Year after, we got 90s. Then 2027 is Hercules. 2028 is Mulan. 2029.
All those movies are short.
They're short. Like
a live action bullcrap.
Exactly.
Put them in theaters for so many show times. You're gonna make money from.
They will be,
right. Like how much did Little Mermaid, the live action one, bomb last year? That movie was like, I think the lowest grossing Memorial Day release in years. I'm pretty sure.
That happened. Yeah. And I was talking to Polly about this because we before we saw Inside? When did we go to Barnes and Noble? Before Inside Out, we went to Barnes and Noble, and there's like the Disney, DVDs and Blu-rays. And I was telling her, I was like, there was a time where those movies were hard to get.
Yes.
They were a part of the Disney vault, and they would threaten people like, this is the only chance you have to get this and take it home with you.
Yep.
Because other than that, you're not seeing it again. And those movies need to be special. But now that Disney Plus is the thing and everything is on there.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Well, that's just part of the overall argument that I've been making for years now, which is that the digitization of movies has made the medium less special because of how much more easily accessible it is. So naturally, it's already by nature, by virtue of how accessible it is, it's already lost a lot of kind of what made it special.
Yeah.
But I've been saying that for years now.
Yeah. It was crazy to see a Lion King Blu-ray. because I remember the DVD.
Yeah.
And then
for me, it was cassette tape. I had Lion King on cassette tape. I didn't have that on DVD.
You had the tape. And
I had the DVD. The DVD used to come with games.
It has to come with
games. Go on the safari.
Yeah. I still remember all of that. I remember all of that.
Yep. 2-disc special edition. And they never put it back out. They're like, you're not seeing this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a sad time that we live in, honestly. But like I said, as far as these studios who are constantly complaining about how they're losing money, but then they put their movies on streaming only 2 weeks after they're in theaters, it's like, well, what? It's like, what do you expect? It's like you're not giving these movies a chance, you know. Yeah. And as far as the theater chains having a monopoly on the actual industry right now and charging $20 for friggin' tickets, it's like no wonder nobody's going to see this show in theaters.
A lot.
Yep.
That's too much. That's not.
For concessions, fine, but my ticket should not be $18.
Right, my ticket should not be $18. But also
here in New York, it's more expensive. Like in Florida, it's
well, yeah, but again, the chains across are pretty universal. It's only like AMC in Connecticut, like where close to where I was growing up, like those tickets prices were the same as they are in New York City. Yeah. It's only the local like chains that are like exist outside the city that still do like the $10 pricing for tickets, you know, like some of the local theaters by where I grew up. Those are the ones that are still doing like those low prices, but the chains no. And the problem is that the chains, the AMCs, the Regals, all that have such a chokehold monopoly on the theater viewing experience that like they allow for like no competition. It's sad, honestly. You know.
Now the Alamo just got bought by Sony.
I saw that, and so now we're going back to how it was all the way in the beginning, where the studios are owning their own theaters. You know, we already kind of had that with Netflix, you know, but Netflix only had those theaters so that they could put
that was it.
So that they could put their movies in theaters for Oscar runs. You know. So yeah, this is.
I think they should do like if they do Hercules sing along on a theater like. We will be there.
Right, exactly. Like, but no, I'm so glad that you brought that up because that's how Encanto made its money. You know, Encanto came out in November of 2021. Nobody saw it in theaters. They put it in Disney Plus like a month later, and it had such a groundswell underneath that they put it back in theaters with the sing-along version. And I'm like, why did you just do that to begin with? You know, but like if they just did that for every one of the movies from the because we already missed Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. Those 30-year anniversaries already came and went, but like they have a golden opportunity if they do that with Lion King and start that going through all the way through to like Tarzan, which is like kind of when that era kind of cut off. Man, golden opportunity right there.
They made money. I mean, they should learn from Sony. This year they put out the Spider-Man movies.
There you go.
Every Monday from like April to June or whatever. And
exactly. They all made money. They all made money. You know, because unfortunately, if Hollywood is incapable of making good new movies, which clearly they've been proving that for a couple of years now, just re-release the old stuff. We'll still watch it.
We'll still watch it.
You know, like if there's one thing that I have learned, it is that families are still willing to go to theaters and have that experience. They need an extra incentive because, like Tarantino said this back in 2015, the theaters are not doing a good enough job getting people to leave their houses to come out and experience entertainment outside their houses. He said this in 2015, years before COVID happened or anything like that. You know, ironically, the same year that the first Inside Out came out. So also another weird trend that I noticed, Inside Out 2, it's only been a couple weeks since Furiosa. And both of their initial installments, Mad Max Fury Road and Inside Out, both came out in 2015 in weeks of each other. But like Fury Road was in the same month too, because Fury Road was May, not Memorial Day. It was a couple weeks earlier, but Fury Road was May, and Inside Out, the first one was June, because I was talking to Paulie, that was the week we graduated high school. Like, what is going on right now?
Yeah,
like
we got a wake up call back to 2015.
Literally, it's been weird. It's been weird to say the least. You know, I'm trying to think of other callbacks.
Like people not going to the movies and see. I don't think that my brothers, that one of them is 24 and the other one is 20. I don't think they've been in the movies like since they were like 15 or whatever. You know?
My brother is my one brother has been to the theaters, I think 3 or 4 times in the last like 2 years at most.
I don't think my brothers have been into a theater, into a cinema, you know.
Well, because think about it, right? Like, typically, what's like the prime age where you like start to go to watch movies in a theater, right? It's around like those, you know, like those like high schools, you know, 15, 16, 17. All those kids when they were that age were stuck at home during COVID. So that's what they know. That is the entertainment that they have. So it's going to be on the next generation of kids coming up, seeing if they are the ones that want to take that risk and, you know, kind of, you know, go out. And also like, but also it's the whole idea of like, you know, going to see movies and experience them has changed so much,
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of things that we're going to have to keep our eyes out going forward. So with all that being said, that is it. That was our review of Inside Out 2. This podcast went in a lot of directions that I was not expecting, but this is why we podcast. This is why this is why we do this. Paulie, I'm so happy I was finally able to get you on. Jeremy, not only did we get you back on when you said you were never coming back, we finally got to see your face. We got your face.
You got my face.
We got you on camera, bitch. We finally got it.
I'll be back for Moana 2.
Yes, I know you will. I already have it marked out. I already have it dated. It's going to be great.
Can't wait.
Oh, man. It's going to be fun. Before we get out of here, do you have any social media or anything that you want to plug?
Oh, yes. My Instagram is Poli Rivero. ¿Cómo se dice guión bajo en inglés? Underscore. Yo, bro, it's Sunday morning. Give me a break.
I love it. This has already been like my best podcast that I've done, probably.
You need it, you little diva here.
At least you finally started to own it.
Oh yes, of course.
Oh man.
Thanks to you.
What can I say? I call it how I see it.
Hours following King Viserys' death. My brother was a slave to his omens and portents. Anything to make his feckless reign appear to have purpose. What are we going to do about it?
Did you really think that you could just fly about the realm, trying to steal my brother's throne?
Beasts didn't make us kings. Dragons did.
All right, here we are, House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 1, entitled officially, as you guys can see here, A Son for a Son. I was actually really happy because this let me dive back into my old graphics folder from Talking Thrones from back in the day, the Game of Thrones recap show that I hosted from April of 2021 until about a year later in 2022. And now we're back. So, Eli, before we get into this show, right, House of the Dragon, right, because I never really got a chance to talk to you about this on this podcast, right? Kind of the bad taste that the last season of Game of Thrones left in everybody's mouth. I mean, were you excited when you heard that they were making this show, or were you like, oh, great, I'm not so sure if I want. And at the time, like, it had been 3 years since the final season came out, but I mean, but still, like, it was still pretty fresh in our mouths, honestly. So, what were your thoughts when the show was first announced?
Oh, I mean, I frankly, the sour taste I had in my mouth from season 8 still hasn't gone away, if I'm being honest. So when they did announce this, I figured, because they also talked about doing the Jon Snow show, which since has been, I think, canceled, and I don't think they'll revisit that. But honestly, when I heard that they were looking into doing these spin-off projects, like the Dunk and Egg series that is eventually going to be coming up here shortly, and this, I was kind of disappointed. I was just like, I don't know if we really need more from this universe after what they did with it. And frankly, like, can they really even do more? Obviously, when I heard that they were going to do it based on the Dance of the Dragons, I thought, a prequel, I guess that's kind of all they have left to do. And I wasn't really all that excited for it. But honestly, when the show did come out, I was pretty blown away by the quality they'd put into it and the writing. And obviously, I don't know what you know about the book that it was based on, but it's basically based on a book that's basically a collective history of the Targaryen household. But the story is told from the perspective of a maester, and his bias is pretty clear, and he even admits that he doesn't have a great idea of everything that had happened, and some things are exaggerated probably in the case of the tale. So there's some room for flexibility when it comes to the actual perspectives of people that were in the show. And I honestly really liked it. That first episode, they introduced a something I thought was really cool with the kind of the plot line about the king passing the secret about the long night eventually coming back to every heir, and that kind of recontextualizes a lot of decisions that previous rulers made in the lore and everything. And it kind of it's kind of nice to make even the hardcore fans think about it differently, like the way that we did. And honestly, every episode has been a treat. The characters are very true to how they were portrayed in the book, and with some slight differences here and there. But overall, I was very happy with the first season of the show. And honestly, my expectations were completely blown away. Not that the bar was that high, but
yeah, but no, but I'm right there with you, because as somebody who, while I will admit my research into the lore of Game of Thrones, it has gotten pretty extensive over the last couple of years, but it still wasn't as up to snuff as I would say as yours definitely is. And the thing obviously to notice is, like you said, I was just like, okay, after that stinker of a finale, I needed a break. I needed some time away, especially, you know, because like it's 10 years of our lives that show was part of us, you know? So like we dedicated a significant amount of time to it. So it, quite frankly, shitting the bed the way that it did certainly left a bad taste in a lot of our mouths, and we needed some time in order to wash it out. And I'm really glad that HBO still had confidence in the brand and Martin's world and Martin's written work, because to think in the post Game of Thrones and also now the post Prestige TV era as well, with as few good shows that we actually have now, the fact that we do have House of the Dragon, at the very least, is one of the few shows that we're like, okay, we can depend on this. This is going to be solid. This is going to really, really hit and actually give us like kind of the escapist entertainment that I feel like we've been so craving. You know, we were talking about that a little bit on Inside Out 2, the Inside Out 2 podcast this morning, about kind of the sorry state of the industry. And the biggest thing that I noted when I saw the first episode of the first season 2 years of House of the Dragon 2 years ago is, I'm like, okay, this is similar enough, but it feels differently. You know, it's much more Shakespearean in tone. The characters feel much closer to Martin's original, like, you know, morally gray, where you don't really root for any of them, and everybody's kind of got their own motivation and their own thought process. I really like that. And as well as the story kind of recontextualizing the thoughts and decisions of everything that happened in Game of Thrones, but also giving us a new story. The fact that it is now this war for the throne, but that's caused by trouble in the line of succession, ultimately, kind of how that was rooted and how that played out. A lot of people complained about the time jumps in season 1. I thought that the way that they were able to use that whole season as the buildup towards the war was phenomenally done, just from a storytelling standpoint, what they were able to accomplish across the course of 10 episodes. Still was certainly able to surprise
for sure.
As somebody who's been watching Game of Thrones for almost a decade and a half now, I think, possibly more. And I had grown so used to like that story structure and kind of what to expect with each episode, that the fact that show was able to surprise me as much as it did. And that's even before we get into the dragon insanity. But I really love the batch of actors that they have. You know, Matt Smith, Olivia Cook, what's it called? You know, Emma D'Arcy, and just for the first season, Paddy Considine as Viserys was a revelation. I've been watching him and stuff for years for like supporting parts, but this is like the first time I'd ever seen him lead anything, and he was killed it. Rhys Ifans as Otto Hightower, and even some of the later season editions as well, particularly two who I thought shined. One who I thought shined at the end of season 1, despite his few episodes of screen time. And that's Ewan Mitchell's performance as the older Aemond when he grew up in the last couple, able to deliver a lot with very, very little screen time. And now this season, Tom Glencarney's performance as Aegon II. You know, he I feel like because the result of last season, it kind of felt like he was being pulled between the sides between Alicent and Otto's competing agendas. But now that he's like the king, we actually finally get to see him like as king in this episode, and you start to see like, okay, how he is like, you know, kind of, you know, is he the king that everybody thinks he's going to, you know, because they're a war, but like somebody still has to rule, and he currently is sitting on the Iron Throne. We spend a lot of time in King's Landing in this episode as we're transitioning into what the episode is actually about. A lot more so than on Dragonstone, I would have thought. We actually opened, they promised us Winterfell. We got it. They opened it. We're back at Winterfell. You get this cool little voiceover narration, you know, kind of once again explaining the process of the Night's Watch before we cut to Cregan and Rhaenyra's son Jacaerys as they're standing atop the wall, and you know Jacaerys is in the middle of recruiting him. What did you think being back at Winterfell and seeing Ned Stark's ancestor Cregan?
It was pretty cool. Cregan is I don't know if this really counts as a spoiler, but Cregan is plays a pretty big role in the coming conflict, and so to kind of finally be introduced to him, and especially the reputation that he has in the fan base, I think was really cool, and I'm very excited to see what comes from it, and if there are any slight tweaks that they're going to make to the storyline from the book, and I feel like that we'll get something interesting. I'm sure that I have full faith that they are going to deliver, even for the fans that kind of already know what to expect. So I'm all here for it.
Yes, absolutely. The Hour of the Wolf for all of those Fire and Blood fans that have read it. It is certainly a coming. Yeah, I thought Cregan was cool. I love how I like how what they've done really with all the characters in House of the Dragon. And like I said, Cregan Stark portrayed by Tom Taylor, some of the newcomers, some of the new additions to the main cast we get. I believe 2 others this episode. We've got a lot of new additions this season to the cast, but I believe that we only get 3 of them in this episode. The first of them, right, being Cregan, portrayed by Tom Taylor. The thing that I like is that I feel like they modeled each of the characters in House of the Dragon, personality and physicality-wise, after one of the original Game of Thrones characters, but because the characters are different themselves, it still allows the actors to like have a different challenge. With Rhaenyra and her similarities to Daenerys, Alicent with Cersei, Aegon with Joffrey, and now obviously with Cregan, the direct comparison obviously is to both characters like Ned and Jon Snow, and so kind of seeing those little juxtapositions that are kind of thrown in there. I think it's a really, really clever bit that House of the Dragon does, and it's most of the time franchises screw it up, but I think it's really cool how they're able to pull it off here. We don't spend as much time though in the North as I would have thought, because Viserys flies home quick upon getting a message of unfortunately what's happened. And the biggest thing that kind of looms over this episode, like I said, they're still sticking pretty faithful as far as to what happens in Fire and Blood. The thing about Fire and Blood and the way that it's written is that it's written as a history text, but from an unreliable perspective. So it's more so an overview of events rather than a first-person perspective of the story, the way that the original Game of Thrones books are written. Right. So it's always fascinating when you see like interpretations of events in the book versus kind of the way that they're portraying it in the show. You would assume is what's actually happening. The biggest, obviously, example that comes to mind of that is, the actuality of Lucerys' death that happened in the finale of season 1, where it's really, in the book, it's portrayed that Aemond, I should say, sorry, oh my God, the similarities of these names, had malicious intent, but in reality, it's that he lost control of his dragon at the end of the day, and the dragons acted by themselves, and that's a big theme that was established in the first episode last season. Is again the idea that men control dragons. It is an illusion, and it is only going to lead us on a path of destruction. And it's so fascinating, kind of again exploring the Targaryens dynamic with the dragon, because that was something that really Game of Thrones only could really scratch the surface of, given its vast scope and
the fact that only one character really had dragons.
Exactly. But so now that the dragons have become such a crucial part of the storytelling and exploring like the Targaryens' relationship and control, or rather lack thereof, over each dragon is really fascinating, to say the least. So obviously this episode being entitled "A Son for a Son," they rumored it heavily. One of the in Fire and Blood, obviously, it's one of the next big event after the fight over Storm's End. Is the Blood and Cheese arc. So for any people who are very familiar with what happens in this section of Fire and Blood during the Dance of the Dragons, it is the infamous Blood and Cheese arc, which is explored at the end of this episode, which is where Daemon, on behalf of Rhaenyra, infiltrates the city with help from Mysaria, his former concubine, who is now sort of taken over like the de facto role of I would say that she's the Littlefinger more so of this sect, versus Larys Strong is the Varys, I would say. Basically, due to the fact that Daemon, if anybody remembers from the beginning of season 1, was the commander of the City Watch. He still has a lot of loyal followers in there, and he commissions a member of the City Watch along with one of the rat catchers in the castle. He kind of commissions the 2 of them to go into the castle. But this is where they change it for the book. Originally, in the book, he gives them the intention of their orders are simply a son for a son. But in the show, he directly commands them to find and kill Aemond as revenge for Luke's death.
Which makes sense.
It does make sense. But of course, what happens is they end up stumbling upon oh my God, what's her name? Helena, right? That's her name? Yeah, Helena. And her 2 kids, Jaehaerys and Jaehaera. And let's just say that the show is not opposed to child murder. That's all I'm gonna say. And they shot that poor kid's head off. And man, it is not a pretty sight, but it is basically like, let me put it this way. They are already moving towards war. And now they are just like, okay, this is the point of no return. Like
lines have been crossed.
Lines have been crossed that there is absolutely no coming back from. I mean, when you knew, because the biggest thing that we didn't know is if Son for a Son was going to happen in this episode or the next episode. But obviously now that we know that Blood and Cheese Son for a Son is this one, that means that the Duel of the Twins is going to be in the next one. That's going to be episode 2. And then obviously we know that because what they've told us, that Rook's Rest is episode 4, which, oh my God, you want to talk about it? I'm really excited for that. And from what I've heard about the early reviews, it is going to be, they said that it's on the level of Battle of the Masters. And I'm like, oh, let's fucking go. Like, I cannot wait.
But I think the fan base deserves something like that, especially after the pretty much not having anything good battle-wise since the Battle of the Bastards.
Really? Yeah. I mean, the closest we got. I mean, we got some good dragon action in the last season for sure. But again, the fact that last season, it's kind of the formula of Game of Thrones. It's every other season is a setup season.
Yeah, but with the last season, they could make it as much of a spectacle as they want. But when nothing makes sense, it just kind of just like nobody's gonna remember the actual intenseness of the battle.
It's bad that I have to go back and
all over the place.
It's bad that I have to go back and rewatch those episodes from the last season just to remember what happens, because the emphasis is so on the spectacle and the character motivations just get completely lost. Not here though.
I can't bring myself to watch anything after season 6, man.
Yeah.
For
me, I still like season 7. I like season 7. You and I still disagree on that, but I still am a fan of season 7.
Forever a season 7 hater, just because of the character assassinations we get.
Season 5 for me is still the worst one because of how hard they deviate from Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons.
Oh, for sure. That's also one of my biggest.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that season. There's only one good episode of that entire season, and that's Hard Home. But blood and cheese, man. So going into it, you knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew exactly what was going to happen. Like I said, the only major change being that Daemon orders them to go and find Aemond, and that doesn't happen, obviously, which again, it's what happens when, this is the type of assassins that you hire. What did you think of it, man?
Honestly, compared to what happened in the book, I think they downplayed it, but I think
for
it's
sure
fitting, obviously, with the perspective that the book was written in. Things could be exaggerated or misinterpreted, or stories change as they're passed down from first, second, whatever sources. And honestly, it seems like a much more realistic scenario of what would happen compared to how it was portrayed in the books. For anyone who doesn't know what happened in the book, basically they kind of had Helaena cornered more with her sons. Both of her children were awake too, apparently, in the book, and supposedly, right? We don't actually know for sure, but right. They basically told her to choose which child dies. But she had to basically look her own kids in the eyes when she said it, and when she said
Sophie's choice moment, and literally Sophie's choice.
And she told them to kill the youngest one because her reasoning was that, oh well, he's not old enough to really comprehend what's happening. And then they killed the oldest anyway and tell the youngest one, yes, you hear that? Your mom told you that she wanted you to die. And then it contributes a lot to her kind of mental spiral.
Martin really does have a fucked up mind to just come up with this shit. Like.
Yeah, I mean,
there's so many things that I read in the books that even David and Dan, when they were adapting Game of Thrones, they're like, even at their worst, they're like, okay, George, we can't go this far.
There's some things, just a lot. There's a lot more sexual violence in the books too than what happens in the shows. But honestly, I mean, they accomplished the goal of making it about as brutal as they could, and I think Helena's reaction was pretty in character because she was always a little bit off. I don't know if that's just the incest or what.
Probably, but again, definitely also, and I know this is never really confirmed in the books, but Helaena definitely has some sort of magical ability, because the fact that she's able to, have the foresight to be able to have predicted a lot of events just, by wording it vaguely. She's definitely a prophet of some kind. I mean, she calls it earlier in the episode when she's talking to Aegon, when she's like, yeah, I'm not worried about the dragons, just the rats. So yeah, like I said, that's kind of the main centerpiece of the episode. Really, again, House of the Dragon is I mean, Game of Thrones. This goes back to Game of Thrones, but every episode kind of has a major set piece, and so some other plot elements that they introduce in this episode. Obviously, one of the big ones for me is Alicent and Kristen Cole hooking up. Didn't see that one coming, especially because that's not one that's necessarily confirmed in the books. But I'm glad. It's funny because, of course, when they introduce Alicent, and she is getting eaten out, turned every which way but loose, to quote Jeremy when he was talking about Emma Stone in Poor Things, and that's exactly what's happening here. I was half expecting it to be Larys Strong for a second, and then I'm like, but then it shows them getting dressed as Kristen Cole, and I'm like, man, this dude just has a thing for powerful women. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So. There was that one. Otto Hightower still scheming, but still kind of serving his own agenda. And unfortunately, as we know, that's going to kind of backfire this season when Aegon removes him and kind of gets rid of him. A very, very, very low use of Aemond in this episode, I must say. Was kind of surprised by how little he was in it. But given that the large overall portion of this episode was dedicated to kind of everyone's immediate reaction to Lucerys' death, I'm kind of surprised that the word spread as fast as it did, considering how many locations this show had to hit. Because I think in this episode alone, we're at King's Landing, we're at Winterfell, we're at Storm's End, and we're at Dragonstone, and I think we hit Driftmark too. Oh no, well, because is Corlys on Driftmark or on Dragonstone?
Corlys is on Driftmark.
Okay, so Driftmark too then
in the show, because they're trying to prep his navy.
Right, they're trying to prep the navy exactly for the incoming blockade of the Gullet. Yeah, so then we also have, Rhaenyra, unfortunately, has taken some much-needed time away. She's patrolling Storm's End for Lucerys' remains, and she discovers, unfortunately, Arax's wing and what's assumed to be, his saddle. I don't know if they actually recovered the body or not. What's it called? With the beginning of Rhaenys and Daemon's conflict as well, when Rhaenys arrives back in Dragonstone, Daemon tries to get her to team up with them in order to go and kill Vhagar as revenge. She refuses But what do you think about Daemon both reminding her and also Sir Eric or Eric, whichever twin ended up coming over to their side, of the fact that some very poor actions on their part sort of kind of contributed to this, where, as we know, in the penultimate episode of last season, Rhaenys had a chance to end the war by blowing the entire Hightower side of things to smithereens with Meleys, and she didn't.
And that didn't happen in the book either. Not that
Right.
it's a huge deal, because obviously adaptations, you can kind of do whatever. But I do think for the overarching story that kind of leaves a few holes where it's like, okay, she basically committed like a terrorist attack, and
Literally,
it's not being talked about enough, where she killed like probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people in that one moment.
Right.
And
remember, it's Targaryens. They don't care about the commoners as much as
right. And I just felt like it was a little off character for her to do something like that, and even then, when she had the shot, to not take it at that point, because she'd already crossed so many boundaries. Like, it's not like she could just walk in, a couple years later, and be like, "I'll remember that silly thing," It's, I don't know. So that's one of the few problems I did have with season one. I think that's why that episode in particular was probably one of my least favorites.
Yeah, that episode, the Greens episode of the 2-part finale, is definitely I'm not as much of a fan of as the final episode for sure.
Yeah.
But Rhaenys' motivation definitely, as far as continuing to have the the chip on her shoulder, as far as not being selected to rule over Viserys. Obviously is still riding high, and it's unfortunately caused her to make some poor decisions, to say the least. And we're gonna see when that pays off in Rook's Rest in a couple of episodes. The next big new character introduction we get, one of the two Hull brothers, Alan of Hull, that we get in this episode when Corlys is going down to the harbor and inspecting his ships, shipmaster. Again, for some backstory and some lore here. Alan is revealed to have been the one to have saved Corlys and pulled him out of the water during the second siege of the Stepstones. And
I believe so. Whatever battle he got injured in.
Yeah. So obviously in the books, Alan and his brother Adam of Hull are both people that compete in the sowing of the seeds, which I assume we will see at the end of this season, which is when Jacaerys put out feelers on behalf of his mother for other people to attempt to come forth and claim the unclaimed and wild dragons that still reside on Dragonstone. And this resulted in Adam, who is not the brother that we see here, claiming Seasmoke, who previously belonged to Laenor Velaryon. What's it called? Corlys' thought to be deceased son. But Adam and Alan, the lore there is that they are heavily rumored in the books to be Laenor's bastards. But considering the fact that those two are pretty much the same age, if not older than Laenor, it's pretty obvious that they're doing what was heavily rumored in the books but never confirmed, which is that they are both bastard sons of Corlys Velaryon, which is why they are believed to be able to claim the dragons, because of the Velaryon blood that hails from Old Valyria as well. So we get that introduction there, which was pretty cool. Alan himself doesn't really have a super lot to do, right? It's really Adam that kind of gets a lot of the shine once he claims Seasmoke and begins to participate in the war heavily.
Yeah. I wonder if the show will give him some extra. Maybe, I don't know. There's a couple ways they could leverage his character, I feel like, if they did want to go that route and introduce him more. I just feel like they already have so many characters to balance that.
And especially when certain characters, I think they said they're not introduced. Like, for example, they're not introducing Daeron this season, if at all. The youngest brother, Aemon and Aegon's youngest brother. And they're also not introducing Nettles this season. I believe this is rumored. I don't know.
I heard that Nettles might be scrapped from the show entirely.
Right, I heard that as well. I heard that as well.
Crazy, because she was
Nettles is a pretty important character, honestly, within this part of the story.
Right. It was very interesting. It almost makes me wonder if they're going to replace her character with
Rhaella is what I heard, that they could potentially have Rhaella introduce her. And obviously, we know that Baela, I think, is going to end up playing a little bit of a bigger part, obviously, because of, we see her riding Moondancer, and they've shown a lot of footage of her riding Moondancer. Her dragon as well. Rhaella in the book famously, when her dragon, I don't remember what her dragon was, but Rhaella's dragon was too young to be able to be ridden. Some other kind of key crucial moments. what's it called? So we got that Aegon attempting to rule. I like how they're showing Aegon as more of a buffoon than a malicious buffoon, because
Right.
I like that he is still attempting to kind of measure up to his father's idea of idealism and prove that he can be a good king, despite his lesser tendencies, let's call them. He is still a drunken sot and he is still definitely an idiot, but he, at the end of the day, does want to do right, at the end of the day. And so I kind of enjoyed that dynamic between him and Otto as well. Him like trying to ultimately at the end of the day do good by all of the King's Landing locals who are attempting to petition him, and Otto consistently having to remind him that, like, look, our needs kind of have to come first. We're at war now. We have to focus on our needs first. But we get the third of some major new character introductions. One, Hugh Hammer, on behalf of the Blacksmiths, who is another one of the Dragon Seeds. He is the Dragon Seed that claims Vermithor, which is the dragon that belonged to the old King Jaehaerys, who is ruler before Viserys. And unfortunately ends up playing a pretty big part once we get into the later stages of the war in season 3 and beyond. And also just as well, House of the Dragon yesterday was confirmed to have been renewed for season 3. So we will have a lot of events that come later on in the war to look forward to in that season. But overall, like I said, it does what good Game of Thrones premieres have done in the past, which is that they're kind of introducing us to the new characters. They're kind of getting us back into the world. No major action really happens except for maybe one or two big events ultimately at the end of the day. What were your thoughts on the episode as a whole?
As a whole, it did feel a little slow, but it felt appropriate given kind of the climax of the finale of season 1 and how everyone needs to react to that, and basically that confirming what we already knew, but that war is on the horizon and it's going to be pretty messy. And I thought maybe it could have been a little faster, but I really have no complaints overall with how the story is progressing, and at the rate they are going, I'm sure it's going to start picking up, if not in the next episode.
Oh no, it's going to start picking up very, very quickly, as we see in the look aheads for the next couple episodes. Like I said, Otto Hightower mentioned his brother in Old Town, who would be coming in to assist. We obviously know about some of the other Dragon Seeds that are going to be making their appearance. Also, the character portrayed by Gail Rankin, whose name I am currently forgetting. Let me just look it up real quick, because we got a lot of new additions for this season. So she is going to be playing. Nope, that's a video. I don't want that. All right. So we haven't seen Gail Rankin's character yet. There's a lot of new stuff and a lot of events that are gonna be happening this season. Like I said, everybody who's familiar with this with the Dance of the Dragons and how it goes, it's a very bloody war. There a lot of different switching sides, obviously. Eli, so do you have how would you say that this compared to the book overall, as far as capturing this section of the war and as far as where you think it's going to lead? Like, obviously, because there's a couple changes. For the most part, this section is pretty faithful. So my question is, we always used to do in the old Talk and Throw, Joe, we would do shout out characters and we would do predictions for what's coming up. And so now, given that we know that it's not a direct adaptation, what are some predictions you have? Because I know that there's some things that we are going to get. We know episode 2 is the Battle of the Twins. We know episode 4 is Rook's Rest. And we know at some point near the end of the season, probably either episode 6 or 7 is going to be the Sowing of the Seeds. It's also reduced episode count from last season. Last season was 10 episodes. This season is only 8 episodes. So what are some predictions you have for going forward to the show, as far as maybe some changes that might happen?
Oh man, in terms of the overall story, I can't imagine they would change much, other than maybe certain moments that happen in the big battles that kind of turn the tides. I'm thinking maybe some background characters that maybe are hardly mentioned at all in the books might play a bigger role than we expect. I think maybe someone like Larys Strong comes to mind, who probably has his hands in a lot of pockets and can kind of sow influence where he can in a couple different ways. I think Kristen Cole will see a good amount from him this season, and
for sure
end up hating him a lot more than we already do. And I think honestly, Matt Smith, I think has been my favorite character. The way he's portrayed Daemon has been top notch, and I think his moments in the season to come are, I don't really see him being dethroned as my favorite character. I expect, honestly, I like the way Aemon's arc is handled in the book, I'm very curious to see how that translates to the show. Just because seeing how he is as a king already makes me think about him a little differently, seeing he has like maybe better intentions than how he did in the book. So I'm very interested to see what comes in terms of particularly Aemon and Daemon, all the similar
Yeah.
sounding names, but
Yep.
those are two. Especially, I think Aemon really kind of the actor came into his own in this episode. Obviously, he only really had 2 episodes to even kind of
Right.
have a presence, but he's already kind of gone through quite an arc, just from being the reluctant ruler, kind of just wanting to fuck whoever and not really.
Wait a minute. Have you been talking about Aemond or Aegon?
Aegon, fuck.
I just realized because you were describing him. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, are you talking about Aegon?
I meant Aegon. Nope. Aemon barely had anything to do this episode.
Yep. I was about to say.
Nope. King,
Listen,
current king Aemon.
Honestly,
Aegon,
at this point, I think we're gonna have to make it a staple. It's like, okay, how many times can we get the names confused in one episode?
Yeah, I'm usually so good about this stuff too.
It's already happened twice, so
yeah, no, I know. I'm horrible with it, but yeah, Aegon. I think Aegon and
yeah, I agree. Tom Glenn Carney for me is the standout. Obviously, Emma D'Arcy, Matt Smith still crush it. Also, shout out to Rhys Ifans as Otto Hightower. I think he's an underrated element for kind of how slimy he is ultimately.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that he's a really underrated as kind of like the Tywin Lannister stand-in ultimately, but way slimier. And honestly, I will say a lot less smarter because a smarter man would have been able to definitely, and smarter ruler would have been able to definitely outmaneuver everything that kind of happened here. Like,
yeah, and I feel like Tywin wouldn't have let Aegon's shenanigans.
It's funny that you mentioned that because the whole thing is that Tywin obviously is away from the city when Joffrey orders Ned Stark's head cut off, which is the impulse decision that ends up starting the war in the original series. And in this one, Otto Hightower is fully around, and if anything, is kind of maneuvering everything and orders. Again, tries to make moves in order to ensure that their side will win. Because remember he ordered Harold Westerling to assassinate Rhaenyra at the end of last season, and he refused ultimately, and then obviously, peaceful negotiations and that went south. So if anything, it's more so that Otto Hightower is trying to be efficient, but he's kind of held back by everybody around him, particularly Alicent, who is still grasping at whatever means for peace she possibly can. And clearly is not happy with the way that things have gone, ultimately.
I feel like Otto just kind of assumes people will approach things with more decency than they do.
Yes.
And where he always thinks he can kind of get one up on them. But I feel, especially when dealing with Daemon, there's no low.
Who we know Otto loves so much.
Yeah, especially.
One of the funniest parts of the first episode is just establishing that Otto and Daemon fucking despise each other, and that being such a good motivation as far as being the two different halves, especially because Otto has every single right to despise Daemon just based on the character that he does, but unfortunately it caused Otto to make some very, very rash decisions as a result of it. So,
sure.
Yeah, so that happened. Like I said, not a whole lot from Corlys and Rhaenys. We know that that's going to come kind of later on in the season. So yeah, and also I do have to give a shout out to Emma D'Arcy because the problem is that obviously with how last season went, right? You had Millie Alcock portraying the younger Rhaenyra for the first half of the season before it shifted to Emma D'Arcy, and it was such a switch, right? I thought that Millie Alcock was brilliant as the younger Rhaenyra, and Emily Carey I thought was just kind of whatever as younger Alicent. And then when the switch happened, and Olivia Cook and Alicent becomes Olivia Cook, who is one of my all-time favorite actresses. I'm like, oh my God. And the fact that she so gets that character, and the fact that she literally auditioned for the part with Cersei doing a Cersei Lannister impression is mind-blowing to say the least. Yep. And it was definitely an adjustment getting used to Emma D'Arcy, who portrays Rhaenyra in a lot more regal and, I'm not going to say cold, but, a lot less warm than Millie Alcock did. And so it was an adjustment, but she definitely, I think, settled into the character, definitely was able to make us grasp the vulnerability, an older Rhaenyra, a more maternal Rhaenyra, one who definitely has a much better grasp of the sense of duty that she has to go through. And now Rhaenyra with sons. And I thought that was particularly well exemplified in this is, part of Rhaenyra's struggle is the fact that as a mother, spoiler alert, she loses a lot of her sons. And this is the fact that this is just the first one.
A lot of people are going to lose a lot of children.
A lot of people are going to lose a lot of children, as this episode probably demonstrated. But like Rhaenyra, I think is the most. And I think that what happened was, Luke's death was so sudden and so out of nowhere in terms of how it ended last season that we didn't really get a chance to grieve. It was more so just the shocking bit of, oh, fuck, when we saw it. But seeing it, seeing the fallout from it, particularly and how that hit Rhaenyra, and also Jace when he gets back to Dragonstone, which I was not expecting that to happen as quickly as it did, and kind of them
hugging each other and then throwing all of the stuff into the fire. That hit me hard in a way that I was not expecting it to. So again, props to this show, props to, Martin's universe. We're back, dude. We're back. Oh man, I'm so excited to be recapping the next couple of seasons where we finally have some good shit to look forward to and review. As far as overall, what would you give this episode?
Overall, I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5 just because it's kind of just further set up for the conflict that's going to come. But I think they do a good job of reestablishing everyone's motivations after the break between season 1 and season 2, kind of showing kind of the cracks on both sides and how everyone's kind of struggling and the conflicting allegiances between the Greens and the Blacks and their, various supporting families and everything. So, yeah, I really have no major complaints. Just the episode didn't wow me. Obviously, compared to the book, I think the whole scene with blood and cheese was just a little underplayed, but it's to be expected given how the book was written and how things could be exaggerated. And I think the fact that they are tweaking, especially some of the bigger moments here and there, leaves a little bit of unpredictability. So, anything can happen. And yeah, I'm excited to see what comes in the next few episodes.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. And with that being said, thank you guys for joining us for our premiere episode of our House of the Dragon recap show. So like I said, a little bit of housekeeping for those who have been keeping track. The next couple of weeks are going to be a combination of House of the Dragon and The Boys recaps with maybe a movie or two thrown in here and there. I was able to record Inside Out 2 this morning, so that will be on this week's. Next week's episode will just be The Boys and House of the Dragon, and then the week after, there'll be some movies thrown in there as well, because we also have The Bear Season 3 dropping as well. It's going to be a content-packed summer, and we hope that you guys tune in for each and every single episode that we put out. Like I said, now that I'm done with school, the content game is about to go up. Eli, thank you once again for joining me. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Always a pleasure, Dom. Between the 3 days that we've done this podcast and the Boys, I have not yet made that YouTube channel. Hopefully I do by the end of the year. But as of right now, I only have an Instagram. If you want to give me a follow, shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to talk about movies, TVs, storytelling in general, anything along those lines. You can reach me at E_Holicky, like it's spelled on the screen here. E_Holicky45 is my Instagram handle. So.
Yes, sir. And you can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talking TV Podcast across all platforms. Subscribe to us if you're watching us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. This episode will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts tomorrow. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll be back this week. Like I said, we're going to be going live a lot this summer. We're going to be going live all during the summer, and you guys are not going to want to miss it. But stay tuned, and as always, watch more fucking movies and TV shows. We'll see you guys next time.
Hours following King Viserys' death. My brother was a slave to his omens and portents. Anything to make his feckless reign appear to have purpose.
What are we going to do about it?
Did you really think that you could just fly about the realm, trying to steal my brother's throne?
Kings make us kings. Dragons did.